All right, let's get it. Drive time Tuesday afternoon, 14 minutes past the hour, 2 o'clock. Turned into a nice warm afternoon after a chilly morning. Little cloud coverage, but some sunshine here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. About 62 degrees on this beautiful May Tuesday afternoon. And as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic, Porter Larson behind the glass today, producing, booking the show. Busy, jam-packed Tuesday show as we're getting ready for the conference finals in both professional basketball and pro hockey. Conference finals, Final Four for both the NHL and the NBA. No basketball or hockey last night, but the Timberwolves and the Thunder at Paycom Center in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, tip off at 6:30 tonight on ESPN. Tomorrow night will be the New York Knicks and the Boston Celtics. So the West tonight, the East tomorrow. In the world of pro hockey, it's going to be the Panthers and the Hurricanes in Raleigh, North Carolina. First puck will drop at 6 o'clock on TNT. So busy night tonight as the conference finals get going. A couple of new mock drafts I want to get to as far as who the Jazz could look at number 5. And the Jazz also have a second first-round pick and a couple of second-round picks as well. I want to remind you, we will have you taken care of coming up on June the 25th. Our draft night coverage will be excellent. It'll be myself, but most importantly, it'll be Gordy Chiesa and Richard Smith, two guys that basically spent a lifetime in the world of professional basketball with Utah Jazz and others. Gordy should be in the Hall of Fame. We'll get to that maybe at some point, but it'll be exciting and potentially out and about. We'll let you know what our plans are as we will bring you excellent coverage of the draft, and we'll stay on for the first round on June the 25th. The second round is the 26th. It actually runs through our afternoon drive show. So we'll be able to bring you live analysis of who the Jazz land on in the second round or if they trade up, trade down. Speaking of rookies, the all-rookie team came out today in pro basketball. No Isaiah Collier, no Kyle Filipowski. But they landed just on the outside looking in. I believe Collier was 11 as far as the votes go, and Filipowski was 12. Isaiah did get one first-team vote, but did not make either first or second team. So kind of hoping for that for either of those two who had very fine rookie campaigns for the Utah Jazz. A lot of rumors regarding NBA offseason moves. A lot of them are kind of involving the potential of the Jazz getting involved. We'll keep you up to date as we go throughout the show today. So a lot to do on the program today. The Jazz have announced their Summer League dates, July the 5th through the 8th. It's going to be played at the Huntsman Center, not Delta Center, because, of course, construction downtown. I'll tell you what, the last time the Jazz played Summer League at the Huntsman Center was the rookie season of one Donovan Mitchell. And I was there courtside, and that was the first time I said, oh, okay, this kid is serious. He gave it to Jason Tatum once upon a time a number of years ago at the Huntsman Center. So we have that on the table today. NFL offseason meetings, some voting today on some rules. Namely, the NFL will allow their football players to play flag football for the 28 Olympics. Here's my question right out of the gates. Who are we playing against? Like, who in the world can field a flag football team that can keep up with, like, football is an American sport. Does, like, Turkey have football players that I don't know about? When I first saw this story, like, who are our peers in flag football worldwide?
Yeah, there's a little NFL Europe action. Of course, rugby, like countries that have rugby, I know they have like little niche football teams because there's that kind of overlapping interest, but there's not much as far as anything that should compete with the Olympics, especially if you're just kind of going out there and doing the flag football 7-on-7 thing. You should win a gold medal and not have to send any NFL players.
No, like when I first heard, like, all right, should we let NFL players play flag football? I'm like, against who? It's like, does Uzbekistan have a quarterback I don't know about? This seems like an odd thing.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm sure once it becomes an Olympic sport, that's the thing. Once it becomes in the Olympics, regardless of how, funny we may find it, curling once upon a time looked pretty silly, I'm sure. But once it becomes an Olympic sport, you have countries that will invest in it. They will literally put money into having a football team, even if they are in the middle of nowhere. So, hey, grow the game.
It just kind of strikes me as our Olympic team, 92 Barcelona.
Yeah.
Like every game is going to be a blowout. But anyway, They're also voting on the tush push. They're voting on moving the kickoff up. They're voting on a bunch of different things, NFL offseason style. There's also a news from Ross Dellinger about the current landscape of college football that could throw an absolute monkey wrench in the House versus NCAA settlement. We're going to unpack that on the show today at some point because, of course, we are always one eye on college football. Less than 100 days away. I'm not sure when we're starting the countdown. It's my favorite thing. But busy guest list today. Our first guest will be Lee Ellis, one of our favorites to talk basketball with. Lee is from Australia. Maybe I'll ask Lee if Australia has any football players that our NFL players need to worry about for the 28 Olympics. Tim McMahon, NBA Daily Assist style from ESPN. Richard Smith live in studio to preview tonight's action and talk a little Jazz hoops. Then the head coach of Real Salt Lake, Pablo Mastroeni, will stop by. I'm going to try to be nice today. Scoring goals would be cool. Scoring a goal would be cool. It's been almost 250 minutes since RSL scored a goal. They welcome in the best team in Major League Soccer, Vancouver, coming up on Saturday. Lee Ellis, Tim McMahon, Richard Smith, Pablo Mastroeni, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. And that guy, you've already heard from him, Porter Larson. How did you spend your Monday evening sans any sort of basketball or hockey playoff action?
Yeah, a little tennis, a little gardening. As I mentioned on the way out yesterday, I moved recently and have enough room to grow my own food, which is very, very cool. So I'm building a garden. Played some tennis yesterday, but now we got basketball back. It's one of the rare days during the spring that we don't have hoops. We're spoiled. Start of like conference tournament time in college basketball, basically into June. We're pretty spoiled with hoops almost every day.
Yes, indeed. But playoff action returns tonight, both on the ice and the court. And we're going to preview those games for you guys today. Our first guest will be Lee Ellis. Fun basketball conversation with Lee. Always enjoy when he pops by. But before we catch up with Lee on a Tuesday, courtesy of our good friends and your good friends too, at Prize Picks, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
Cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup. Whether it is points, rebounds, or assists, take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. You can turn your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series. Starting with a play-in round, every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you into the Take-Two ticket sweepstakes, which could get you and a +1 a VIP trip to the ship. So here's what you do. You download that Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700, and they're going to hook you up with $50 on the house when you play that first $5 bet. You do not even have to win the $5 bet. You just get the $50 on the house. So go get some free money. See if you like it with our friends at Prize Picks. You can run your game all season long with Prize Picks. I'm going less tonight on Chet Holmgren, 9 rebounds. I'm going to take more Ant Edwards, 28.5 points. Give me less on Shea, 31.5 points, and I'll take more on Jalen Williams, 5 assists. So there you go. Follow along, play if you'd like. It's a lot of fun with our friends at Prize Picks. All right, we've got a sneaky good series between the Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Western Conference Finals gets rolling tonight at 6:30 Mountain Time on ESPN at Paycom Center in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Tomorrow it's going to be the Eastern Conference turn. It'll be Knicks Celtics, of course, so excited for that one. Did you know that the two best teams since March 1st in the NBA are playing tonight? The Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder. OKC is 28-6 since March 1st, and the Timberwolves are 26-6 since March 1st. Those are the two best records in pro basketball since March 1st. And, you know, it's interesting, whether it's Tim McMahon or Dave McMiniman or any of our NBA guests, Howard Beck, etc., Tim Bontemps, throughout the course of the end of the regular season, and honestly, a few weeks prior to that, maybe a couple of months left in the regular season, my question to all of our guests was pretty similar after Oklahoma City had established themselves as the best team in the West and one of the best regular season teams, historically speaking, period, when you look at the net and look at some of the splits. And I would ask the same question, who is keeping Mark Daigneault up at night? And the answer would vary a little bit depending on the ebbs and flows of the season or depending on acquisitions, trades. For instance, when, of course, the Lakers got Luka, a lot of people thought the Lakers were going to have something to say about the West this year. I did not believe that to be the case. I will change my view next year when these two have more time to play together, but I just did not think it was enough time. And then after the trade for Mark Davis, the kid from Charlotte, fell through. They just don't have any bigs. They could not play Jackson Hayes. We're not doing a Lakers breakdown, but a lot of people thought maybe the Lakers would have something to say about it. Golden State gets Jimmy Butler. They kind of changed their defensive schematics, and a lot of people thought maybe Golden State would have something to say about it. Of course, Minnesota dispatches of Golden State in 5 games. Oklahoma City is coming off one day of rest after dispatching of Denver in a really tough 7-game series. Now, OKC 6-2 on 1 day of rest throughout the course of the postseason. This is a young team with a bunch of great young players. They go 10-11 deep. They could even go deeper than that, if I'm honest. I don't think the lack of rest is going to plague them. On the other side, Minnesota, 2-4 when they have more than 3 days of rest, and they have 5 days of rest tonight. So it's the old question, rest versus rust, what will play out. Oklahoma City is a 6.5-point favorite. They're 5-1 at home during the playoffs. They're, as I referenced, they're 28-6 since March 1st, which is the best record in pro basketball. I think there are a lot of really interesting matchups to watch tonight. We have 2 of the great young, I'll call them wings, even though SGA is a primary ball handler for Oklahoma City. Anthony Edwards, of course, really the emerging face of the NBA, probably the best young domestic player. The best young player still probably is Luka Doncic, but we have 2 of the best ball-in-hand dynamic wing scorers going at it tonight with the T-Wolves and the Thunder. The Thunder are not just a favorite tonight. They are your favorite to win the series. Minnesota is looking to advance to their first NBA Finals in history. They have never gone to the NBA Finals. I think they were an expansion team in 1988. They have never been to the NBA Finals, not one time. Oklahoma City was last there in 2012. That was the Durant-Westbrook group of OKC. So that was the last time they were in the NBA Finals. And, of course, a ton of interesting matchups and a ton of interesting schematic approaches between these two coaches, 2 really well-coached teams. And Minnesota, of course, features a lot of former Jazz men, namely Rudy Gobert, 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. I wonder if there's a place for Mike Conley in this series. And the only reason I say that is, Mike is a guard who at this stage in his career, he was fine being a smallish guard when he was younger and had more speed. But now that he's a little bit older, he's been kind of resigned to like a spot-up jump shooter, right? And they try to find Mike for open corner threes. He will initiate the offense a little bit. But I'm just afraid with what OKC has as far as their dogs on the perimeter. I mean, Shea can really guard. Jalen Williams can really guard. Alex Caruso. It's going to be interesting to see what Mark Dagnall does with Alex Caruso. He put Caruso on Jokic, Game 7. That actually worked. My guess is we're going to see a healthy amount of Alex Caruso on Anthony Edwards. Ant is so dynamic that you have to throw a bunch of different looks at him. But the thing with OKC is they have the personnel to do that. You're going to see Shea on Ant. You'll see Jalen Williams on Ant. I bet you see Alex Caruso, Lou Dort, maybe even a little Cason Wallace, even though he's not very big. So Oklahoma City has this grip of personnel on the wings with big athletic size that can really cause Ant a lot of problems. But what makes this interesting is Minnesota has the same thing. So what do they do with Shea? Because Ant can guard. Jaden McDaniels can guard. My guess is Jaden gets the primary defensive assignment on SGA, but they'll probably put him on Jalen Williams as well. I think Gobert is going to be able to neutralize Isaiah Hartenstein, that little floater. That's something interesting to watch out for. These are 2 really good teams, and we kind of have a sneaky, excellent Western Conference Finals matchup because there's no Golden State, there's no Steph, there's no LeBron, there's no Lakers. So I wonder how many people really fully understand that, honestly speaking, these are probably the 2 most deserving teams in the West based off of the way both these teams have played since March. Again, Oklahoma City, the best team in pro basketball since March 1st. The second best team in pro basketball since March 1st is the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they do battle tonight. We'll give you some picks later on, but playoff basketball back in the house this evening, coming up at 6:30. That is your tip. All right, we're going to bring in Lee Ellis coming up in a little bit, but I want to tell you about my friends at Cortland Roofing, and my guy Corey joins me live in studio on a Tuesday. Corey, what's going on, man?
Not much. How are you?
I'm well. I appreciate the time today. So let's start with the good stuff right away. Unpack the spring special because if people need a roof replacement, they got to call you today because they could save literally thousands of dollars.
Yeah, so give us a call today. There's basically two offers that we have in store right now. So the first one is we'll give you $1,500 off a roof replacement, or if you are in need of gutters, we will do brand new seamless rain gutters at no additional cost if you do your entire roof.
Again, thousands of dollars of savings. So I'm going to hit you with a number right away. It's 801-615-5560. That's 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560. The website is cortlandroofing.com. All right, let's get a little background. Tell me about your company, Corey.
Yeah, so we're a local company. We're family owned and operated, and that's important because you get a lot of these out of town companies that aren't even from Utah, especially the ones that send out their door knockers. So they just want to do your roof and then get out of town. But we're here local. We're family owned and operated. We are a preferred contractor with a lot of the main manufacturers, so we can offer you the best warranty in the business. We're licensed and insured. We employ our own crews, and that's important because a lot of times, we're not picking guys up off the street. We have our own crews that we've had for a long time that do an amazing job, and so that's a little bit about us.
Anyone who has ever owned a home knows that sometimes working with homeowners insurance can be, shall we say, complex. But you guys kind of help people traverse this space. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so about 70 to 80% of the roofs we do, the insurance company is involved in some way. So we have a ton of experience when it comes to the roof with the insurance process. And so we really help homeowners navigate that. And it really starts with an inspection to see if your roof will even qualify for insurance. And, a couple weeks ago, we had some high winds, 50-mile-an-hour plus winds that probably did a lot of damage to roofs. And so if you're seeing shingles, scattered around your yard, or if you look up and you see some missing shingles, or if you even suspect you might have some wind damage or even hail damage we occasionally get, give us a call at that 801-615-5560 or go to our website at cortlandroofing.com.
All right, before I set you loose for this segment, we'll tackle a couple of other things throughout the course of the show. Let's review the spring promotion one more time, Corey.
Yeah, so the spring promotion, if you call today, you get $1,500 off of a roof replacement, or if you're needing new rain gutters, we will do brand new seamless rain gutters at no charge.
All right, guys, today's the day. The weather's about to get really warm. And if you walk outside, you look at your roof, you're like, yeah, we need to get that taken care of. You might as well save thousands of dollars with this great spring promotion with our friends at Cortland Roofing. Here's the number. It's 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560, online at cortlandroofing.com. Corey, thanks, man.
Thank you.
All right, Lee Ellis joins us coming up right out of the gates on ESPN 700. All right, Tim McMahon is going to roll by today. He covers the NBA for ESPN, NBA Daily Assist style. Richard Smith live in studio. 40 years with the Utah Jazz front office. Then Pablo Mastroeni, head coach of Real Salt Lake, will join us later on. But we're batting leadoff with one of our favorites. And I'm told he's in the heart of New York City in Midtown Manhattan is where we find our friend Lee Ellis on a Tuesday afternoon. Lee, happy Tuesday, sir. How are you?
Fine, thanks, Spence. Thanks very much for having me.
How's the weather? How are the conditions out in New York City?
Actually beautiful. Really nice sunny day. Not too humid as well. I live in Atlanta, so we're already stinking hot in the humidity. But it's nice and breezy. The streets are alive, and you can sort of feel, a bit of energy. The Knicks haven't been in a position like this before, and so I was down at Madison Square Garden before, and you can sort of tell everyone's pretty excited and looking forward to Game 1 tomorrow night.
Ooh, I've got the forecast up. It does look lovely in Midtown Manhattan. Good for you. So you referenced that you can kind of feel the buzz in the city. Are you noticing people wearing Knick jerseys and hats and such? Are you seeing a lot of Knick paraphernalia out and about New York?
Yeah, absolutely. And even one Devin Booker Suns jersey, which sort of
Oh,
stood
wow.
out to me a little bit. But other than that, again, just the energy around the Garden there, just before. Like, everyone's sort of excited. They can't wait for it to happen here tomorrow night because, as I said, they just haven't been in this position this far into the playoffs for so long. And not only that, but I think they are a real chance too because, I don't think anyone realistically had them beating the Celtics. And they did that quite comfortably and quite impressively. And now they go from being underdog in the conference semifinals to being favourite in the finals. So it's quite a remarkable position that the Knicks find themselves in right now.
Lee, the last team to win a championship with a ball-dominant, smallish guard as the best player really was Detroit back in the Isaiah Thomas, 1988, 1989 days. And that's who the Knicks are. Now, it's not just Jalen, but if we're honest, he really is the engine that makes them go. What stands out most to you about how Jalen Brunson has answered every question that's been thrown at him? A lot of people, as you probably recall, were very skeptical that the Knicks decided to go all in on him. And I'll admit that he's better than I ever thought he could be. What stands out most to you about his growth?
I think it's that continual clutch performances. If you go back to the Pistons series, he really delivered on the road in Detroit. He closed out that series with a huge three. Remember, they were down 7 or 8 points with about a minute to go in Game 6, and Brunson stepped up and knocked down the shot. And then the same thing in the Celtics series. And again, I've got to give so much respect and admiration to Tom Thibodeau and the entire team because they were getting smoked by the Celtics in that second round, down 20 in 3 games and came back and won. And so it's not like that that can happen once and you can say that was an anomaly. But then when it happens a couple of times and then when it goes back to the other previous series, it's like this team has got some real resilience and some real spine to them. And it starts with Brunson because he's never afraid to take the shot. He's never afraid to put the ball in his hands. He's had some really good defenders on him too. Asar Thompson, while only young, very athletic, very fast, and was right up in Brunson's grill a lot. And then the Celtics have multiple guys they can throw at him in Jaylen Brown and Derek White. All those guys, Drew Holiday's another one, really good high-quality defenders. But every time Brunson has a chance, he wants the ball in his hands. And sometimes he makes the right pass, sometimes he hits the right shot. He doesn't, nail every shot. But I like the fact that he doesn't, miss a shot and then all of a sudden go into his shell. He won't be afraid of missing a shot. He just wants to take it because that's what they employ him to do. That's what he's paid to do. And he was the clutch player of the year in the regular season, and then he's gone on and proven that in the playoffs. So, this is why I'm sort of in this position now where I look at the Knicks and I think they haven't, they didn't get lucky in the playoffs. Now, the Pistons, of course, weren't that experienced, but then they had to go out and beat the defending champs on the road, and they did that so well. And now, even if they go down big, it's like they've got guys who can get them back into it. Mikal Bridges, his offense in the last quarters has been really good. Karl Anthony Towns has been, good most of the time. He's had a few down games, but they've got options, they've got weapons, and then when the game is there to be won, the ball goes into Brunson's hands every time, and everyone on that team is confident he's going to make the right decision. So I think that comparison to Isaiah Thomas is actually very, very good because they're about the same size. They're tough, they're resilient, and now Brunson has got, a catalogue of big shots to sort of prove that he's up to the moment.
So away from Jalen and even Cat for a moment, because I think it's safe to say more often than not, those two, certainly Jalen's going to get his. And, Cat has a complex and kind of varied history in big games. Some good, some bad, and that's, kind of the way it goes. But the three-headed monster on the wing, so Mikal Bridges, who they traded 5 first-round picks for, Josh Hart, who I kind of feel like is the heartbeat. I didn't even mean to do that, of that team. And then, OG is, even though, at times the shot can get loose, he was so good against the wings for the Celtics in the playoffs and has been one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA all year long. So what do you make of what they need to get from those three against a Pacer team that just has a bunch of pit bulls and they want to fight everybody?
Well, they can all defend, like you mentioned there. They're all sort of Tom Thibodeau guys. They know that they're expected to put in on the defensive end primarily, and they do that. But all of them can also hit those threes, which is really the modern game the way it is. You need to be able to shoot, and you need to be able to at least be relied on to knock down some shots. Now, some games you might have Josh Hart going for 25 or 30 points, or it's OG. Even Bridges can get that. It's usually not all three of them, but it's usually they almost rotate that around, which is, again, it's great for the Knicks because they've got options and they know they're going to get it out mostly of one of those guys every game. Now, when I look at Bridges, I don't love his shot selection at times and I don't love his shooting mechanics, but he's effective. And again, he did that really well in fourth quarters against the Boston Celtics. So, I don't think the Knicks are super deep, but they've got, like, if you throw in Mitchell Robinson and Deuce McBride, they've got 7 players pretty much is the length of the rotation, but all of them go out there and contribute primarily on the defensive end. McBride is not as good as those guys, but certainly Mitchell Robinson is as well. So everyone who plays, you just sort of know that that's what Tom Thibodeau is looking for firstly. Can you go out there and defend more than one position? And pretty much all of those guys can. So, the Pacers, this is a really interesting matchup because the Pacers have got so many guys as well who can go and get their own bucket. Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton. Neesmith's been shooting the ball really well from 3. And then Miles Turner as well. He's going to spread the floor. So everyone's kind of got a good matchup. Everyone can kind of hurt each other. And that's why I think we're really set up for a great series here because it should be tough. It should be tight. But honestly, we should see some really good, high-quality basketball because you're going to see defense from both teams. And I think that's the word I keep coming back to because for so long when the Knicks stunk, they just were bad defensively. And I think now Tom Thibodeau has finally, got to that point where he's been able to implement his style and everyone's bought into it and everyone understands what their job is. And now we're seeing the results of that.
It's interesting. One more thing on the Knicks, then I do want to ask you about the Pacers specifically because they deserve a lot of credit for what they've been doing. And I've known Tom Thibodeau for a number of years. He was an assistant in New York for Jeff Van Gundy, and I certainly respect the man. But when you're up 110-74 with 5 minutes left in the fourth, isn't it time to pull your players?
Well, yes. That's the one area that I think. And, I've noticed because I've been at a lot of the Knicks games, certainly here in the playoffs, and in the regular season I saw it too when the Knicks were in Atlanta. Rick Brunson is often the guy who has to go up and say to him, come on,
yep.
This is enough's enough. Because, it's the one stubborn trait that Tibbs has that he still is very reluctant to give up, and that is to, basically acknowledge when a game is in hand. And, if you go back to last season in the playoffs, Jalen Brunson broke down. And if you go back to when in the Chicago Bulls days, Joakim Noah still talks about it on podcasts now. Like those guys, ran into the ground by Tibbs. And so I think he has loosened up a little over the years, but he still could improve on that because I was watching that the other night with the closeout game and Cat was on the bench and they were up, third, whatever it was, and he came back in. And I was like, what are you doing? You're just playing with fire at this point. But fortunately, everyone survived. And, by closing it out in 6, they got an extra couple of days of rest. But, it's one of those things that I think Tibbs still needs to really work on.
So, Lee, as you know, the Cleveland Cavaliers, led by our old buddy Donovan Mitchell, had a historic regular season. And, the favorites to play in the Eastern Conference Finals were the Cavs and the Celtics. We've already discussed the Knicks beating Boston. And I'm sure if you're a Cavs fan, you can lean into we weren't fully healthy. Donovan goes home after the second round once again. And, of course, it's not all his fault. When he is really cooking, he's as dynamic as any ball in hand offensive generator in the league. Now, I do think, and I've always believed this because I saw it out here, when Donovan tends to put blinders on and do his own thing, while it's really dynamic and very effective, I've never believed that's conducive to winning team basketball because other teammates kind of get a little bit in the mode where they're watching him do his thing and they're not boxing out. They're not playing defense the way they need to. I've always been more of a fan of a team overall approach, but Indiana deserves a lot of credit. And I found it really interesting, Lee, after the final game, to hear Kenny Atkinson just admit, like, they're a level ahead of us. They're better than we are right now. And Rick Carlisle echoed, like, it was interesting to hear him say, we're just on fire. We've got it clicking at the right time. So what stands out most to you about the way the Pacers beat the Cavs? And if you're a Cavs fan, what are you hoping for this offseason?
Yeah, well, I think with the Pacers, they kind of snuck up on pretty much everyone because they started off the season badly and Tyrese Halliburton was bad and maybe there was a bit of an Olympic hangover for him. But I think we saw the Pacers in the conference finals last year. They got swept and the way they started this season was like, oh, maybe they aren't that good. But their record closing the season was 42-14. So they've been playing really well, but because the Celtics and the Cavs and the Knicks were so far ahead of them, I think everyone just thought we're going Boston and Cleveland in the Eastern Conference Finals here, and didn't really give anyone else much of a chance. But you're right. I mean, Rick Carlisle, he's a pretty good coach. He's a pretty consistent coach. He might not be, the most charismatic coach out there, but he certainly gets guys to play to a high level. And that's what I noticed about the Pacers is once Tyrese Halliburton got it going, because he wasn't an all-star this season, but he certainly picked his game up in the second half of the season. But also guys like Nembhard and Nesmith, as I mentioned earlier, really, really important role players. They can hit those threes. They play hard defense. They don't need the ball in their hands all that much. And then Pascal Siakam, who was an all-star this season, he was also fantastic in the second part. So Indiana had one of those seasons that was pretty much ideal where people were overlooking you and dismissing them, and then they come into the playoffs and they cruise along, and they beat the Bucks, who, Lillard obviously was banged up somewhat there, but even if he wasn't, I think the Pacers still win that series. And then, it was called an upset because they took down the Cleveland Cavaliers, but they beat the Cavs 3-1 in the regular season. So it's probably not that much of an upset, really. It was more just that the Pacers matched up well. There were some injury concerns, of course, there with the Cavs, but I think that was really only for one game when Mobley, Hunter, and Garland were out. Garland missed the first game, though, as well. But ultimately, we saw, Donovan is a great playoff performer. He's had some huge moments, but he hasn't been able to turn those into playoff success. He's never gone past the second round. So there is something that's not quite working there, that even if Donovan goes for 40, I think he finished averaging 41 in that series. But what good is that if you're losing 5 games? So the Cavs, a really disappointing end to a very promising season. And where they go in the off-season from here. Now, I don't think they make too many changes because I think overall they probably just look back at what they did wrong and they think, okay, we need to sort of make some improvements from within, because overall I think they've got a good roster. Evan Mobley, Defensive Player of the Year. Donovan, we've already talked about him, and Darius was an all-star this year. Jared Allen has been an all-star. They're well-balanced. They've got three-point shooting. They picked up DeAndre Hunter for their six-man at the trade deadline here. So, they've got all the pieces. Maybe it was just one of those seasons where, they were caught looking ahead a little bit and thought that they sort of believed their own hype, where it was like, hey, we're going straight back to the conference finals here, and, didn't really give the Pacers the respect they deserve. Kenny Atkinson, remember, Coach of the Year, well-deserving as well. I mean, I saw, watching the Cavs this season, they were a lot like those Brooklyn Nets teams that Kenny Atkinson had. Remember, they were fun to watch. They really seemed to be all on the same page and cheering each other on. And it felt like, the Cavs were on the path here to the conference finals before sort of, they couldn't quite get it done there in the conference semi. So very interesting season. Again, I don't think they'll decide to blow it up or anything like that. I think they'll just try to take care of business a little bit better next season, because overall, a lot of their guys are under contract. I think they're a better team than they performed in the playoffs, and maybe sometimes a loss like this can actually help you in the future. So we'll find out. But, Indiana, again, the way they ended the season was just so impressive. that they find themselves in this position. And I think, a lot of people around the league may see it as a surprise, but I don't think the Indiana Pacers themselves are all that surprised that they're in this position.
Moving out this way, Lee, I was surprised to learn this morning when I was doing a little reading to prep for the show that the two best records in pro basketball since March 1st belong to Oklahoma City, who has the best record, and then the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have the second best record. Let's start with the Minnesota side of things, and this is a team that's been together now for a few years, and they had a nice little playoff run last year. Of course, you need good fortune in the NBA playoffs, and you always hate injuries. It was a bummer to see Tatum go down, and nobody wants to watch Golden State without watching Stephen Curry, but Minnesota won't apologize. What do you make of their route to the Western Conference Finals? What stands out?
Yeah, honestly, a little bit like the Pacers in that when they made that trade at the start of the season for Towns, trading him away, I thought that was a bad move. I thought Towns has been there. They're finally having some success. And then they blow it up, I think, for a weaker move in bringing in DiVincenzo and Julius Randle. But after that sluggish start, and remember, they had to basically win on the last day of the season just to avoid the play-in, they've really gotten it together and been super impressive. And I think Chris Finch deserves a lot of credit because he's got them playing at this high level where they were really convincing against the Warriors. Of course, you mentioned no Steph Curry, but even still, they lost that first game, remember, at home when Steph left early on. So there was more that pressure of expectation, like, oh, you can't lose possibly now to the Warriors without Steph. And they went out and won the next 4 games. And Anthony Edwards, I mean, he's ready. He's ready for the hype. He loves being the center of attention, and he's gone out there and delivered. And so, last season against the Mavericks, I saw Anthony Edwards on a podcast somewhere, basically just sort of shaking his head at what Luka was able to do. But you could sort of see that fight in the eyes of Edwards, and the way that he spoke was like he wasn't, feeling sorry for himself. Instead, he realized what it took to get to the next level. And so now he's back here. And I think last season, of course, with Team USA in Paris, he showed, he learned from those guys like Kevin Durant and like Steph and LeBron. Being around those guys really helped him understand how important it is to take care of your body and to be ready and to embrace those moments when they come. So, really good stuff here from the Timberwolves. I mean, you guys, of course, know Rudy very well there in Utah as well. I mean, he has been excellent at times. He sort of fluctuates a little bit, but when he's good, he's very, very good. And, Rudy's he's been in the playoffs a lot. He's an experienced veteran, and he plays such a role, and he's going to have a huge role in this series now against the Thunder because they have the big guys, Chet Holmgren and Hartenstein. So he's going to have his work cut out for him. But as we saw again, against the Warriors, if you are able to really utilize Rudy on the offensive end, I think he grows even more on the defensive end, and there'll be opportunities there for him. And, the Timberwolves are ready. I think they're in a really good spot. It's going to be a great series. I mean, obviously, the Thunder have the best record, so they started home and they were great, but they closed out their series only, 2 days ago. So does that favor, is rhythm more important than rest? We'll find out because usually that's what the result of game one is. So if the Thunder win, it's like, see, it's better to be in rhythm. If the Wolves win, it's like, see, an extra couple of days rest always helps. So there's no scientific proof of either answer, but it should be a fascinating game one either way.
Makes you wonder, Lee, what a team would look like with Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert in their prime, and a Mike Conley maybe, and maybe a Joe Ingles. And it makes you wonder what that team would look like, yeah?
It does. And the Atlanta Hawks coach, Quinn Snyder's a pretty good coach too. So
yes,
I wonder how he would go with those sort of guys.
Yes, he is. And before I set you loose, I will take advantage of the space just to ask you about the Jazz because, ultimately it's tough to see any forward progress at this point. And this will be 4 years coming up since they made the decision to break that team down. We all gather around our television to watch the NBA draft lottery, and we all felt like we were punched in the gut when they fell to 5. But what do you make of where we find ourselves around here before I set you loose with this rebuild that hasn't really brought a lot of hope to the fan base yet?
Well, all I will say, and I'll just preface this by saying I'm not a draft expert, but I've heard, and from what I read and understand, it's a fairly deep draft. So I think you could still get a very good player there at number 5. But obviously the sights were set much higher. I mean, when you have a guy like Cooper Flagg, who's been the number 1 pick all season, that's the sort of, a franchise-altering player that you would ultimately hope to get your hands on. Now, he goes to the Dallas Mavericks somehow. I don't know how that happened, but it did. And the Jazz fall back. So, yeah, it's taking a little bit longer. And, look, Danny Ainge is acquiring a lot of draft capital, so you expect to see some move here soon. But I know it's frustrating. I lived in Toronto for 9 years, and when your team sort of, year in, year out feels like they're either rebuilding or they're, waiting for the next draft or the next season, it becomes pretty frustrating because it doesn't have to be like that. Things don't always necessarily turn around after 1 or 2 seasons, but when it gets up to that 4 and 5 mark, you're just like, come on, man, do something here. Look, we want to see some wins again here. We don't want to be continually looking down the road at the next, 2, 3, 4 seasons away. So I get the frustration, but I will say, I mean, Utah, when they're playing well, it's one of the most fascinating home court advantages, I think, in the league. I talked to Quinn Snyder a lot about this year when I was down at Hawks games, and he said like that home court there was so important for securing home court in the playoffs. And so he knows what it's like, and as a fan, I've never been to Utah, but I've seen it, and I think and I hope for Jazz fans that it's not too long before we see that environment again, because it is certainly one of the most exciting to watch for fans on TV.
Got some good pickup hoops out here, Lee. You should make your way out here. Before I set you loose, tell all of our listeners where they can go find your work.
Yeah, just on the socials, my name, Lee Ellis, Leighellis. I'm in New York City for these games. I'll be in Indiana for the entire series. I'll be where, however long it goes. So if anyone is in New York, I may head up to Rucker Park on Thursday to shoot around and have some fun up there. And then out in Indiana, the same thing. I'm looking for a few outdoor courts to play on while I'm out there. So hopefully if there's any fans listening, they can hit me up and we'll connect and have some fun.
Thank you, sir. Always a pleasure. Safe travels, and we'll do it again.
Anytime. Thanks for having me, Spence.
All right, the great Lee Ellis, one of the nice guys in this business. Always appreciate his time. We're going to bring in Tim McMahon coming up on the other side. But before we catch a break, we welcome in my guy Corey from Cortland Roofing once again. Corey, happy Tuesday, man. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. How are you, Spence?
I'm well. So give us a little background on your company. Let's start there. Tell us about Cortland Roofing.
Yeah, so Cortland Roofing, we've been around for over 20 years. We're family-owned and operated. We're here local. We're licensed and insured. We employ our own crews, and so that's a little bit about us.
Well, I was thinking about this during the break. It's nice today. It's about to get insanely hot. If somebody's out there questioning whether or not they need their roof replaced, why is it important to do this before we're dealing with the summer?
Yeah, so obviously you want to nip it in the bud right now, where if you do have some roofing damage or if you notice some shingles missing or shingles in the yard, you want to get us out there to take a look and to inspect the roof, because obviously the next problem is the roof leaking and it going into the house, and that's really where the price tag goes up. So, we offer free inspections, and we'll come out, do a free inspection, take a look at the roof, let you know how much life it has left, or if there is any type of damage, we can help you out with filing an insurance claim or just getting a repair done.
I noticed that you only have 5-star Google reviews. So people obviously appreciate the way you go about your business because you have 0 reviews that aren't sparkling, right?
Yeah, so don't take our word for it. Go Google Cortland Roofing and take a look at our reviews. We have all 5-star reviews, which really just shows that people want quality and they trust us and that we'll do a good job for them.
All right, finally, Corey, one of my favorite things that I like to do for my listeners is save them a lot of money, which is where you come in. We've got a spring special going on. Let's hear about it.
Yeah, so we got a killer deal going on right now. So there's a couple parts of this offer. The first is if you need a new roof and we do the roof replacement, you get $1,500 off that price. If you are in need of new rain gutters, we'll do free seamless rain gutters for a new roof replacement as well.
All right, there you go. So if you are questioning whether or not you need your roof replaced, you might as well call Cortland Roofing today. Get this done because you're going to save a grip of money, and it's limited time. It's their spring special. So here's the number. Pick up the phone and dial 801-615-5560. That's 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560. Also online at cortlandroofing.com. Corey, good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Tim McMahon is our guest coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. It is a Tuesday on the program. You know what that means. It's time for our weekly conversation with the legend himself, star of every ESPN and, quite frankly, TNT broadcast I'm watching out this way, Tim McMahon. A lot of TV FaceTime for our guy these days. Tim, how you doing, buddy?
Howdy, partners. I was about to go just kind of stroll the court, I'm getting ready for this Western Conference Finals, and now they decided to do a sound check, so I had to retweet back to the bowels of the Paycom Center.
I see. I had a friend text me the other day and said, is Tim intentionally placing himself where he knows he can get the most camera time on these games? So I just have to ask you that right out of the gates.
Well, listen, I like those courtside seats. I'm getting squeezed out of them tonight. Western Conference Finals, you got all these other folks coming in, NBA folks taking my seat, so I still got a good one, but I'm off in the corner. I won't be right behind the visiting coach where you get a lot of good airtime.
Okay, fair enough. I will take advantage of you on the show today, not literally, but I will take advantage of the time to ask you about the Jazz, even though I know there's not a lot to talk about. There's just a ton of reports that after falling to 5, they are going to try to be bold and maybe potentially move up. Who in front of them, Tim, do you think is most likely to trade their pick, and do you think the Jazz can get involved?
Well, I think that most likely would be San Antonio, but I think if San Antonio is trading that pick, it's probably in a Giannis type of package. It will not be the Mavericks. Number one is not available. Aside from that, I could really probably see any of those other teams willing to discuss because, look, my understanding of this draft, I'm by no means a draft guru. I watched maybe a total of 3 or 4 hours of college basketball this year. But actually not true, about 5 or 6. Anyways, Cooper Flag, clear-cut number 1. Number 2, Dylan Harper. And then kind of the conversation as far as, beauty and the eye of the beholder probably starts at number 3. So I think especially, 3 or 4 I think could be up for grabs if the Jazz are willing to obviously incentivize that. They've got a ton of future picks to play with, extra picks to play with. I don't know if there's, with Philly, honestly, taking Paul George might be considered to be appealing. So we'll see what happens. I think there's a lot of things that are possibilities.
Have you been able to connect with anybody over here about their thoughts on, falling to 5 and their thoughts on being in a position to potentially try to be bold based off of all the assets they have? Do you have any idea, Tim, where the head is at of the Utah Jazz front office right now?
Well, listen, obviously very disappointed to fall to 5, but also fully understanding that was statistically the most likely of any scenario. There was a 48% chance they'd end up with the number 5 pick and only 14% chance of number 1. And so, we'll see what that means in terms of aggressiveness as far as moving up, what this summer looks like. But, I did talk to somebody who basically indicated to me that, hey, tanking's a really risky strategy with the lottery odds flattened. And, there's discussions that need to be had about the rationale for tanking versus the risk of ending up in this scenario and really the challenges that come along with real player development when quote-unquote player development is your priority.
We learned this year that nobody's off limits. I mean, hell, if Luka can be traded, anybody could be traded. But do you think the Jazz would actively shop? I'm going to throw Markkanen and Kessler out there because, honestly, I think those are the only 2 players that I would say have proven to be here for the long haul. Do you think they would be on the table potentially, and maybe the Jazz just go all in on being really young and kind of starting the clock now?
Well, I think you asked me 2 different things. Would they actively shop? Or would they be on the table? I'm not sure about actively shop, but I think anything is on the table. Trading Larry Markkanen and trading Walker Kessler was on the table for the Jazz last summer. They were just asking for, an extreme premium type of price. And there was a lot of talk about Markkanen and the Warriors. Nothing ever got close because not only were the Warriors not including Brandon Podziemski in any conversations, which is a deal killer, but they weren't willing to go all in on the picks, and the Jazz wanted everything. Look, could those kind of conversations be restarted? Sure, I could see that. Again, I think Kessler, they were asking for a lot last summer. And given the circumstances, I thought he had a really, really good season, only adding to his value. My guess is they will both be in Utah next season, but I don't think it's a certainty by any stretch of the imagination.
One more thing here, Tim. Your buddy Bobby Marks hopped on yesterday and did an excellent job of outlining just how we have entered this era of parity in the NBA. It's a topic that's been discussed quite a bit. You guys have dug into it on the Hoop Collective, and the markets like ours, cities like ours, have star players, championships. Some Milwaukee, Denver, and then we have Indianapolis, Minnesota, and OKC in the conference finals. And I just feel like, and Bobby was great with this. The new CBA expires in 2030, so that's a 5-year runway. It just kind of adds a little bit of sting around here that the Jazz aren't ready to capitalize on this landscape that seems to be built for a city like Salt Lake and a team like the Jazz.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, and I would just remind you that the Jazz we can debate the semantics of contender, right?
Sure.
But I'm going to say the Jazz just had a pretty long chapter as a contender that closed. They're trying to open up a new one. It feels a million miles away right now, but it's not that long ago that Rudy and Donovan were there in Utah on a team that you felt like had a chance, but just never was able to get over the hump. Could never break through, but had the best record in the West. Was that the best record in the NBA that year?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, again, it's not like it's just been eons and eons of the Jazz out in the wilderness. They had a chance. They weren't able to get over the hump. For a variety of reasons, they decided to go ahead and pivot from that and break that team up. And now, it's been a few years of this. I'm sure it's tough to live through. It feels like it's been a long time. It's frustrating. But again, you're not the Charlotte Hornets. It's been forever, or the Washington Wizards or one of those type of teams. This franchise has recently experienced a pretty high level of success.
Surely you have a hot take on Isaiah Collier and Kyle Filipowski not making either first or second team All-NBA rookie.
I will be honest with you. I skimmed the all-rookie selections and have not really sunk my teeth into or done a whole lot of thinking about them. Collier surprised me a little bit.
Yeah.
That surprised me a little bit. I thought the Jazz did a nice little marketing campaign. They sent me one of those posters is on the wall, one of my boys. So, we at least got half the vote at my house. Unfortunately, my boys don't have an official ballot, but got some Isaiah Collier fans in North Dallas.
All right, moving on. We were able to get 6 minutes on the Jazz, which is more than I thought we could. So let's move on now. Tim, I'm impressed that you were able to play along, but that's why you're a pro. I continue to give you credit, and I talked about this to start the show, because with about 3 weeks in the regular season, left to go in the regular season, I asked you, who's the team that can throw punches with OKC? And the answer would vary based off the week. The Lakers get Luka. Could it be the Lakers? The Warriors get Jimmy. Could it be the Warriors? You're the one that said watch out for Minnesota. And I read this morning, I did not know this, the two best records in pro basketball since March 1st are Oklahoma City and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Let's start with the Timberwolves side of things. What are your main takeaways with how they finished the regular season and how they've been able to advance to the conference finals?
You got to start with Julius Randle. And look, for a lot of the season, it was about figuring out the Randle fit, and it was clunky. And could he really not just coexist but thrive with Ant? You got two kind of ball-stopping, star type of players. They like to operate kind of in similar rhythms where they're kind of getting in each other's way and bogging things down for each other for a lot of the season. The spacing wasn't quite right. There's also the Rudy factor as far as part of the spacing and ingredients there. They took a long time to figure things out. There was a lot of butting their heads up against walls, a lot of frustration. They felt like they were making progress, and then boom, Randall gets his hammy. Since he's come back from that hammy, though, this thing is taking off for them. You mentioned the record down the stretch. Obviously they are sitting here in the Western Conference Finals. Randall, a guy who had a reputation as kind of a playoff dog, to be honest with you, after his stint in New York, has been awesome during his playoffs. He has been a bona fide, legitimate all-NBA caliber co-star. This is a guy who's been all-NBA before, but not in the playoffs. Hadn't played at that level in the playoffs until this season. But here he is. They've obviously got a really good defensive team. They've got the top level type of superstar in Ant, or at least approaching the top level. But this really has clicked because Julius Randle has found his comfort zone and has taken off. And this is a big team with two go-to guys. Up and down the roster, dudes who aren't scared to get their nose dirty in terms of defending. I will say Randall's playing the best defense of his career too. That's been a major factor. We're going to find out what kind of fight they can put up against the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Is there a home for Mike in this series, Mike Conley? I mean, 4 or 5 years ago at 6'1", he still had decent shiftability and speed, moves side to side. When you look at OKC, even Cason Wallace is 6'3". Like, I wonder if Mike is going to be able to play big minutes for Chris Finch in this series.
Well, and that's one of the questions that we're going to find out. Like, Conley's no longer like a 35, even a 30-plus minute per game guy. Obviously, he's kind of shifted into more of a complementary role. I do think, though, he still has value for them. You got to protect him defensively, got to kind of hide him a little bit defensively. But just the calming presence, kind of the orchestrator, the guy who keeps things organized. I'll say this, even if he doesn't play a whole lot, he's got extreme value for them, just as that sage veteran voice on the bench and in the locker room. And, an extra pair of eyes and ears for Anthony Edwards.
So who do you think draws the primary assignment on Ant? With an offensive talent like that, you want to throw a bunch of different looks, and OKC has a bunch of different bodies. Is it Dort? Is it Jalen? Is it Shea? Who do you think draws the primary? Hell, we saw Alex Caruso guard Nikola Jokic. Who do you think draws the primary assignment on Ant?
Well, it sure as hell will not be Shea. It's going to be Lou Dort. Lou Dort's going to start off on him. I think Lou Dort will spend the most time on him. I think it's primarily going to be Lou. I think he's also going to see a healthy dose of Cason Wallace. My guess is that Caruso is going to spend more time on Julius Randle than he will Anthony Edwards. I'm sure he'll see him some, but, think about Caruso's impact defensively so far in these playoffs. Completely ate Jaren Jackson Jr. alive in the first round. And then Game 7, the Thunder's big adjustment was Caruso ended up being the guy who spent the most time on Joker in that game. Now, there's a lot of help obviously involved there, but one of the great strengths of Caruso as a defender, in addition to just having insane hands and instincts, is that this is a tough dude who's got the ability to guard up. So I think he'll be the primary. I don't think he starts. I think he'll get more time than anybody else on Julius Randle. And, again, I think Lou Dort on Anthony Edwards, to me, is as fascinating an individual matchup as you could possibly come up with.
I agree. On the other side, SGA, is it Jaden? Is it Ant? Who draws the primary assignment on Shea?
I would think they would start off with Jaden McDaniels on him for the simple fact that you don't necessarily want Ant to have to exhaust that kind of energy playing 40-plus minutes per game. Now, Ant's going to get his fair share of time on him, but I don't think you want him to have to do that from the opening tip of Game 1.
For sure. All right, the Gobert factor, of course, we are familiar with it around here. And, I was thinking about this, Tim, watching Mitchell Robinson really guard like 5 positions on a couple of different possessions with the Celtics. And the modern-day 5-out spacing offensive attack that most teams like to use is a really tough ask on most bigs. Now, Rudy can handle it, even though some people think that he cannot. How do you think OKC goes about their business? Do you think they're going to try to go small to at least neutralize Rudy, make him chase these perimeter players around the floor?
It's like a pitcher with like 8 pitches, right? Like, they've got a lot of stuff. They can go a lot of different ways. I think they start off with their 2 bigs and kind of go from there. And Game 1 is really, for Mark Daigneault, it's kind of a feel-out game. They're throwing a lot of different things at them, seeing how they respond to it, seeing how they handle it. They do have the ability to play set in a lineup that is 5 out with a 7-footer on the floor. I think you'll see a lot of that, honestly. Looking at it from Minnesota's perspective, I think you're like, hey, let's see if Check can hit shots. He hadn't shot it well during the playoffs. That goes back to last year. They certainly, I think, will play small some with Caruso almost as a small ball center, and then just kind of a crazy switchy type of lineup. And again, I think they'll go too big some with or a lot to start games, certainly, with Hartenstein and Holmgren. So I think there'll be a lot of different looks there. And you know what? Like Gobert, obviously, you think of Rudy, you think of defense, 4-time defense player of the year, and just, he's going to have to be awesome on that end of the floor. I think his screening in this series is going to be critical. Lou Dort is as good as there is in the league as I've got a cart rolling by me at like 100. Lou Dort is as good as there is in the league at navigating screens. And obviously getting Dort off of and is going to be a huge, huge deal for Minnesota. So, Rudy prides himself as the best screener in the league. That's going to be put to the test in this series.
In the playoffs, Shea and Jalen Williams combined are averaging, let's see, this would be 49.6 points between the two of them. Ant and Julius Randle averaging 49.4. So it's nearly a standstill. Better 1-2 offensive punch. Ant, Julius Randle, Shea, Jalen Williams.
So far in these playoffs, it has been Ant and Julius Randle. Because honestly, Jalen Williams hasn't had a great playoff series, or a great postseason so far. He's had some good games. He's not shot the ball well. He's not shot the three well. He's playing with a really painful wrist injury. Don't want to use this as an excuse, but like if you saw the tape job underneath that shooting sleeve, you know what I'm talking about. They need more of the J-Dub from Game 7. If they get that guy, then I think it's OKC, because let's just be straight up. As awesome as Ant is, there's only two other guys I would put in a conversation with him in terms of that level of offensive talent. It's the guy that the Thunder just beat, and Luka. Those are the only two guys. This dude just averaged damn near 33 points a game, led the league in scoring on 60-plus true shooting percentage. Crazy efficiency. Great assist-to-turnover ratio. Like, the guy can score in so many different ways. He's the best offensive player in the series, but I think Jalen Williams is fourth. And it's a pretty distant fourth in terms of the postseason right now.
Chet is OKC's third option. Who is Minnesota's third option? Or is it by committee?
It's by committee, and I think you could argue that it's their sixth man. You could argue that it's not they or seventh man. Even Shinzo, Naz Reid. McDaniels has had some big games in these playoffs, but I think he's a guy who, going into a series, like, you want to see if he's making shots. But there are nights where he looks like that type of dude. So I don't think there's a clear-cut third option for Bill.
All right, before I set you loose, do you have a lean? This feels like a heavyweight fight, man. OKC is the favorite, of course, but I would not sleep on Minnesota. Are you leaning one way or the other, and why?
Well, I definitely would lean toward the team that won 68 games and the best point differential in NBA history, and I would cite those as the two reasons, but I think it's going to be a heck of a series.
Fair enough. All right, Tim, thanks for the time, man. Enjoy the game tonight. Should be a good one.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right, the great Tim McMahon covers the NBA for ESPN, joins us on a weekly basis. All of his work is up on his Twitter page at ESPN_McMahon, including the link to the book that Tim wrote that was released in March, Luka Doncic and the Curse of Greatness. You can check that out on his Twitter page. The conference finals begin tonight in the world of pro basketball with OKC and Minnesota. Oklahoma City is a 6.5-point favorite. And then tomorrow night, it is time for the Eastern Conference side of things, as the New York Knicks will welcome in the Boston Celtics to Madison Square Garden. First conference finals for the Knicks since the year 2000, when they played, coincidentally enough, the Indiana Pacers. All right, Smitty's going to join us live in studio. We'll do some jazz, some good jazz stuff from Tim McMahon today. But before we catch a break, welcome in my guy Corey from Cortland Roofing. Corey, happy Tuesday, man. How we doing?
Good. How are you today?
I'm well, buddy. All right. We're talking about great deals for roof replacements, and that means folks are probably going to have to work with insurance companies, correct?
Yep, absolutely.
And you can help them traverse that space.
Yes, absolutely. It's a lot of people get overwhelmed by the insurance process, but about 70 to 80% of the roofs we do, the insurance company is involved, and so we can really help homeowners navigate that process. So, and we just had a bunch of wind a couple weeks ago that was 50-mile-an-hour plus, and I'm sure it did a lot of damage. So if you're noticing shingles on the ground or if you're noticing missing shingles on your roof, give us a call at 801-615-5560 or visit our website, cortlandroofing.com, and we're happy to come out and do an inspection and see if it's something that's worth going through the insurance for.
Now, we talked about all of your 5-star reviews. Literally every review you guys receive on Google, 5 stars. So you're doing something right. And I would imagine part of that is people trust you because you employ your own crews. Like there's nothing to be concerned about as far as people working on the homes, correct?
Yes, so we've had our crews for a long time. We don't just go pick people up off the street. We have our own crews that we employ that do an amazing job, and that's a lot of the reason why we do have 5-star reviews, because we do quality work and people trust us. So we tell you, don't take our word for it. Go to the website or go to Google and search Cortland Roofing, and you'll see those reviews.
All right, it's the time of year where the weather still feels pretty nice, but we're a few weeks away from scorching hot conditions. And I would imagine there are a lot of listeners that have considered getting their roof replaced and like waiting for the right time. Well, today's the right time because you happen to have an incredible spring special. Let's hear about that.
Yeah, so we've got a killer offer. This is a one-time, or this is the time of the year that you want to take advantage of this opportunity. So it's really twofold. So the first one is if you need new rain gutters, we'll do all brand new seamless rain gutters with a roof replacement. And if you don't need new rain gutters, then we'll give you $1,500 off the replacement of your roof if you call today.
Today's the day. You're going to save a grip of money, and it is the time to get this done before the conditions get scorching hot. So here's the number. Our friends at Cortland Roofing standing by at 801-615-5560. That's 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560. The website is cortlandroofing.com. Corey, thanks, man.
Thank you.
All right, Richard Smith live in studio for an entire hour coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. All right, stay tuned for your chance to win a free round of golf to Bonneville. Oh, man, my home course. We're going to send you to play 18 holes at Bonneville. It is the Festival of Tees, brought to you by the Utah Golf Association. Each day of spring, ESPN 700 is giving away rounds of golf to the best courses in the state. Listen to the Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell from 10 to 11, the Sean O'Connell Show from 11 to 2, and this little program, The Drive with Spence Checketts from 2 to 6, for your chance to win each day from ESPN 700 and the Utah Golf Association. Details on ESPN700sports.com. Richard Smith is live in studio. I have tasked him with coming up with a Jazz draft trivia question that will drop on you at the end of this segment, so stay tuned. Smitty, happy Tuesday, sir. How are you?
We're doing great, Spence. What's going on here?
It's great to see you.
A lot of stuff going on.
A lot of stuff going on,
Yeah.
and I need to give you credit. As the kids would say, I'm going to give you your flowers.
Wow.
Because you are good to remind us that when it comes to playoff basketball, anything can happen, like a Steph Curry hamstring or a Jason Tatum Achilles, unfortunately. No part of me thought the Knicks had a chance against the Boston Celtics. Yet for the first time since the year 2000, the New York Knicks are back in the conference finals. In 2000, they played the Indiana Pacers. And in 2025, they will play the Indiana Pacers.
You know, so what's wild, too, Spence, last night I was on a flight coming back to Salt Lake, and I just happened to flip on the screen. It was a 30 for 30 on the Knicks, two championship teams in 70 and 73, and just the genesis of that and all the guys talking about it, and Walt Frazier and Bill Bradley and Phil Jackson and all those guys. And it was a reminder of how electric the league can be, especially, you know, with New York being the center of it, when the Knicks are good and when they're competitive, and how that kind of ramps everybody up. So it's a fun time of the year in the playoffs, especially when you get to the NBA version of the Final Four, but also if you happen to be a Knicks fan, wherever you are, you know, it's kind of a, you know, maybe a semi-unexpected, you know, turn of events to get this far. But that's why you play in the playoffs.
Yes, sir.
That's what happens, you know. You can get that, right, Spence, or you can get the flip side, which is what the unfortunately the Jazz had, you know, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and they were one of the better teams, one of the expected teams to make an extended run, and then stub their toe a few times in the playoffs against the Clippers, and just, you know, a reminder of how tenuous it is at this time of year and how fine that line is on the positive side or the negative side, just depending on what can happen, right?
Yeah.
Everybody had the Celtics, and then Jason Tatum goes down, unfortunately, but the Knicks have been playing well, and the Knicks have won, is it 4 or 5 road games already?
Five
road games
yeah.
in the first two series. That's unbelievable.
It
you
is,
know, the Houston Rockets, I believe, have the record, if I'm not mistaken, in '94 when they won the championship. They won. I believe it was 9 road games to get to the NBA championship, and they had 2 series where they won 3 road games in particular series on their way to doing that. And that's, to me, that's always been one of the great accomplishments and never gets talked about enough, is how Houston made that run that year, and especially all those road games they won.
Oh, it gets talked about, Smitty. It gets talked about plenty because they beat the Knicks. Who did the Jazz lose to in '94?
No, it was
Houston.
It was the Rockets in the first round.
Because I can remember. So for our younger listeners, look it up. Michael Jordan had retired.
Yep.
And as a child of the Jazz and the Knicks, I thought to myself, '94 is the year that the Jazz and the Knicks are going to play in the finals. I had forgot that Houston actually beat both teams.
Yeah, well, the Jazz were favored. They came in as the 3 seed. The Houston was a 6 seed. The Jazz that was the year the Jazz had made the trade for Jeff Hornacek, and the Jazz were feeling pretty good and were in a good spot. And Houston won. That was when the first round series were best of 5.
That's right.
And the Jazz had the first 2 at home, and it went 2-2, and then the 5th game was here in Salt Lake, and the Jazz were up 7 with 5 minutes to go at home, and Clyde Drexler went on a little run.
That's right.
And the Jazz couldn't stop him at that moment in time, and Houston got over the hump in that series, and then parlayed that into a great run all the way to the finals. But that also precipitated, a lot of thinking and head scratching, by the Jazz the next couple of years really was what precipitated the Jazz bringing in a Chris Morris. Because when we looked at that and tried to analyze everything, and you never try and get, too reactionary to those things, again, plus or minus, because it's a series and a couple things can happen in a couple games, and you don't want to wipe away what you did over a 6-month period over 82 games because you had a bad weekend, right, or something like that. But when we looked at that, the Jazz looked at, hey, if we are going to get over this hump, which the Jazz felt at that time, we have a good team, we have a highly competitive team, we can really do some damage, in these coming years with the core we have now with Stockton, Malone, and Hornacek. But we have to have someone, if we get to this spot again, that can play a matchup against a Clyde Drexler type guy, because we're going to be seeing him again. And so that precipitated the move that eventually became Chris Morris being added to the team. And then we play Houston in 97 in that Western Conference Finals, and now they've got Hakeem, but they've also added Barkley to go along with Drexler. And the Jazz were able to counter with their big three, but also Chris Morris to match up some against Drexler just in terms of his length and athleticism. And the Jazz, pushed through at that time and got to their first finals in 97.
B. Russ on that team?
B. Russ was, he was the starting three.
So he helped a little bit in same endeavor,
Yeah, he was, and he became he worked his way. Brian Russell was a second-round pick out of Long Beach State and came in as really a post player out of college and made himself into a viable NBA wing defender and what is commonly referred to now as a 3-and-D guy, and became a reliable enough three-point shooter that helped offset what Jeff Hornacek was able to do on the other wing with his shooting, and then, of course, space that floor for Carl and John to run pick and rolls and for Carl to have some space to operate down low.
Shandon, too, right? Shandon Anderson?
Shandon Anderson was a rookie in 97, so his first 2 years in the league were the 2 years that the Jazz went to the finals.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this when I saw you on the rundown today, because you had a front row seat to the early Jalen Brunson experience with the Dallas Mavericks. The final, I guess I'll say, nail in the coffin, without trying to be too dramatic, of Gobert, Mitchell, Quinn, that group, was the series you guys played against Dallas. Luka gets hurt. Rick Carlisle gives the ball to Jalen. You're our ball in hand guy now.
Yep.
And it worked really well. And I think it caught a lot of people off guard. And, of course, the Knicks did their calculation. They said, we're going to go all in on that kid. His dad, Rick, is an assistant. He was a Knick back in the day. Are you surprised to see Jalen elevate to this level, or did you see it coming based off of what you guys experienced?
No, I'm surprised. I always liked Jalen Brunson coming out of college at Villanova, where they won 2 championships. But he was always a steadying influence. He always played with a calm demeanor. He got to Dallas as a second-round pick. Give Dennis Lindsey some props. Dennis, who was the general manager of the Jazz at the time, liked Rick Brunson in the draft. It didn't go our way. He ended up going early in the second round to Dallas. And again, the way sometimes these things happen, Spence, and people try and write it differently than it really was. But Jalen Brunson was a nice player for the Dallas Mavericks and a good rotation guy. Doncic goes down. You look down the bench, and I can give you countless times this happened over my years in the NBA, where a coach, looked down the bench and said, pointed to a guy, said, you're up. And you're expecting not anything great, but you're expecting someone to maybe plug their finger in the dike and just hold you in place somehow while some of your main guys go to work or somebody does something in that regard. And then somebody comes out of the woodwork like Jalen Brunson against the Jazz in that playoff series. And again, Spence, you look at it and people will have their own version of of what you should have, could have, would have done and whatnot. But Jalen Brunson was a surprise in that series, played well, helped them immensely to win that series. Okay, the Jazz stubbed their toe in that regard. But now here we are several years later, and Jalen Brunson is doing the exact same thing when everybody knows he's going to do the exact same thing, and they haven't been able to stop it. So it shows his persistence, his development, his talent and skill level, that he has the confidence to play that way, and he's become obviously a main guy in the NBA and has showed everybody that he can lift that kind of heavy load when it's called upon him. And but he may never have gotten the chance to show that, and he may still be, a good rotation guy for Dallas on his second mid-level contract, whatever. If Doncic hadn't gotten hurt, that's that proverbial, be ready when your number is called, mantra, and that you always tell guys. And then when you're in there, here you go. You always said you wanted more playing time. Here's your more playing time. Let's see what you got. And to Jalen Brunson's credit, he's been able to parlay that into, he is now in the middle of a terrific NBA career and the main guy for the Knicks at the moment.
Yeah, and I've been so impressed with his both mental and physical toughness. I know it sounds cliche, but you look at him, and he's a sturdy kid. But even Drew Holiday, who's one of the best perimeter defensive players that we've had in a generation, Drew had some good moments on him, but Jalen would take him down on the block.
Yeah.
Derek White didn't have a prayer against him because Jalen just backed him down. And 6'1", maybe 6'1", quite honestly. And again, built, but I don't know that I really knew that he had this physical presence and mental toughness. And he seems like a perfect Knick.
Yeah, well, he's got the demeanor, Spence, that when things don't go right, you never see him. All these guys always go crazy, or they're yelling at the ref, or they're throwing a temper tantrum in the middle of the game in whatever way they want to. Jalen Brunson always just has a calm demeanor, whether the ball went in or the ball didn't go in, or he got the call, he didn't get the call. Mm-hmm. He's just playing. He's playing. John Stockton was one of the greatest at doing it, just looking ahead to the next play and not worrying about what happened 10 seconds ago, good or bad.
Yeah.
And Jalen Brunson's got that skill. And, again, to the point, do we as NBA fans ever see that if the scenario with Doncic years earlier, doesn't occur?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of guys just need the chance, and that's why we always, when we talk about the draft, which obviously we'll be doing a lot of in the next month or so, and trying to project guys at the NBA, you just never know how someone is going to play, no matter what their talent or skill level or innate athletic abilities are, until they get in the fire and you put them in there and the pressure's on, and now you see, how they think, what their twitch is, what their confidence level is, all those kinds of things. You never quite know. It's the old Mike Tyson maxim, right? Everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the face, and then the plan goes out the window, and now we see what you really got. And Jalen Brunson's doing that in spades.
Frank Isola, friend of the show. In fact, Porter, reach out to Isola. Tell Isola that with the Knicks in the conference finals, he has to come on the show.
I like this, Porter, by the way. Your guy here calling out like a national figure by his last name. Call Isola.
Oh, I made Isola. Without me, Isola's not a thing. Isola's not a thing without me. But Frank always talks about, and then he'll tweet, he'll write about, there really isn't any hard data to support the narrative that Tom Thibodeau plays his players too much. It does not exist. And when you look at it this year, Steve Kerr was playing 10 guys. Steph does his hamstring. Boston's 10 deep. Tatum does his Achilles. The data does not exist. It's a narrative that exists that Tom plays his guys too much. However, I know you were traveling, but Friday night, Game 6, the score is 110-74 with 6 minutes left, and Jalen Brunson is fighting over screens set by Xavier Tillman.
Yep.
Pull the guys. Pull the starters. I know it's Tom's thing, and again, I want to be clear, there really is no data. Isola's been on this for years. There's no data to indicate Tom plays his players too much, so they all get hurt. Guys just get hurt no matter what.
That's right.
But what do you make of that with 5.5 minutes left in the game? All the starters are in, and they're up 40. Why do you think he rolls that way?
Well, if you know Tibbs, which I know you do, is somewhat, he is a high-strung guy, and he is all in, and he's one of those guys who just believes and he just feels with his gut that no lead is safe and it doesn't matter. And you can talk to him, and I know Rick Brunson, one of his assistant coaches, is probably the best at it, to be able to go up to him and say, "Hey, coach, it's let's get him out or something," and he'll like look at him and give him a scowl, like, "What are you talking? Okay, yeah," and wave him off or whatever. And it's just against Tibbs' nature to do that. That's just the way he coaches. He's going to go down with those guys. Okay, it's smart, it's not smart, whatever. But you're right, Spence. All during the season, whenever the Knicks had a little ripple or something didn't go right during the season, or they had lost 3 or 4, whatever it was, there would always be people harping on, well, he's playing his guys too much, and it's too many minutes, and you got to cut it back, because when you get to the playoffs, they got to have some energy left, and blah, 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 and whatever. But now they're in the conference finals. They've beaten the Celtics. They had some tough games against Detroit, which is an up-and-coming team. They're in the Final Four of the NBA. You don't hear anybody complaining about Tibbs is playing the guys too much, right? I mean, it's just a narrative that somebody gets on and somebody takes it and runs off with it, and whether it makes sense or not or whatever, people always are going to use it to whatever way they want to skew the argument, right? And if they're losing some games, it's going to be, oh, they ran out of gas. They played Brunson 43 minutes. You can't do that. Then whatever it's going to be. And so, Tibbs is going to coach the way Tibbs has. Look, he did it in Chicago. He did it in Minnesota. The way he always coaches. The Knicks knew that's how he coaches. That's how he's going to be if he can get his team to a high level, which obviously they have, and they made the big trade last summer. And they went all in on this group by making the trade for Karl Anthony Towns, and also bringing in Mikal Bridges and giving up a bunch of their draft picks and all that kind of stuff they had in the bank. And they rolled the dice on it. And again, things have fallen their way, right? They won 3 games, I think it was, in the Detroit series, like in the last 30 seconds. The ball fell their way. They made a shot. They got to stop. They got to steal. The Celtics, the same thing in game 1, and then they got the thing with Tatum. And so to this point, those breaks some of them they've made themselves, but some of them have happened for them. And in whatever way you want to interpret it, they find themselves now in the conference finals. And, in being New York, as you know very well, Spence, firsthand, whether they win, they'll be the greatest thing on earth. And if they lose, they'll be down in the depths of under 6 feet under the ground. And it'll be this guy's fault and that guy's fault and the other guy's fault and whatever. And that's just the way it is in New York. And at the moment, they're riding high. So we'll see what happens starting tomorrow night.
Honestly, I was kind of chuckling, but I was a little bit nervous. I mean, we're watching OG Anunoby guarding Baylor Shireman, and I'm like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
On the other side of things, I'll continue to give you credit as the guy that's like, look, anything can happen come playoff basketball, and more often than not, in a 7-game series, the best team does advance. And maybe Indiana was just the best team, but Cleveland was so good in the regular season, and Kenny gets Coach of the Year, and Donovan's probably going to be first-team All-NBA. Mobley gets Defensive Player of the Year. And it was interesting, Smitty, after Game 6, was it Game 6 or Game 5? Game 6 when the Pacers won, whichever the closeout was. Kenny Atkinson readily admitted, they're at a level that we're not. They're better than we are right now. And then Rick Carlisle steps to the podium and owns it. He's like, yeah, we're flying. We're playing the best basketball we played all year long, which is the old cliche, right? Play the right way at the right time of year. What do you make of the way the Pacers were able to get rid of Donovan and the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Well, it was a great series for them. First of all, they have been running hot the second half of the season. They've been playing very well, the Indiana Pacers. After they stumbled out of the gates early in November and December, and Halliburton, maybe wasn't his usual self, whatever, early in the season, but they got their feet under them. They got through the All-Star break. They played very well the second half, and they've just gotten on a, what some people would call a heater. They're playing well. It's not a surprise because they're a good team and they've got good players. But when they play together, and the way Rick Carlisle has them, how they share the ball, they move it. It doesn't matter who gets the credit, but Halliburton is the key for them, and he's got that kind of a personality like Gilgeous-Alexander does for OKC, and Jalen Brunson does with the Knicks, where they're the catalyst, but they all have that mindset that they don't care who else does it as long as it gets done. And the Pacers are on that kind of a roll. And winning that first game in Cleveland where they came back and they were down, they should have lost.
Yep.
And they again, the ball bounced their way a couple of times, and Mitchell got the offensive foul call that was questionable, and then Halliburton misses a free throw, but he ends up with the ball back as a rebound, which should never happen in the NBA, and is able to stick that three at the buzzer. Those are the things that have to take place along the way if you're going to have some kind of an extended playoff run. So none of these things are a surprise. It's just when you're the team that it's happening to in a positive way, you want to keep those things going, and you want to make sure that your mindset doesn't trick you into thinking that you're better than you are, that you understand, okay, we got a break there. Okay, the other game, the guy fell down and lost the ball, whatever it is. But we have to stick to what we believe we can do to the best of our ability to give us a chance to be successful. And I think they're going to be two terrific series. I really do. I think it's going to be fun to watch.
Before we catch a break, I have a question about Donovan. And in the question, I will insert an opinion. And then I want you to go. And you might get mad at me for this.
I'm already mad, Spence.
Okay. Well, that's the Smitty MO.
I can see it coming.
Always angry. Well, because here's the thing. Ultimately, if you just look at the numbers and you look at some of the playoff explosions he has, he's in the most rarefied of air, including Mike, including Iverson, including Kobe. Individual playoff scoring, Donovan is on a short list of somebody who's been able to do what he's done throughout the first 7-8 years of his career. Never been out of the second round. And certainly I'm not putting a team sport on one player. But I noticed at times here, and maybe it was out of necessity, and at times in Cleveland, when he just goes all in on doing his own thing, it's really fun to watch at times because he's that talented and he's that good and he can get his own. But at times it feels like his teammates stand around and watch him, and suddenly they're not cutting or they're not guarding or they're not boxing out. And you've got a bunch of guys standing watching one dude do his thing, and at times maybe at the expense of the team. And then at times he runs out of gas. We saw it at times. And look, Cleveland has to rely on him in a very heavy way offensively because he is that good. And you guys did the same thing because he is that dynamic. But at times, does it feel like he puts blinders on to the point where maybe it's not conducive to team winning? Is that fair, or what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I would push back on that somewhat, Spence. He does those things because he knows that he can do them. He knows that his team is relying on him, that the heavy load is on him. But that stuff you're talking about, that's on the other guys.
Sure.
The other guys, that's their problem, their fault if they're standing around watching him instead of cutting baseline, instead of spacing out weak side, instead of going and getting a screen on somebody or rolling to the front of the rim or whatever it is. That's on the other guys to not be ball watchers, on the other guys to understand this is what's going on. My guy is about to spin, dribble to his left and get in the lane and try and do a double pump or something at the dotted line. So I got to get in position for a potential rebound, or I got to at least get in front of my guy and try and box him out So maybe we can get an offensive tip or something in those circumstances. Donovan, I could tell you, he's all about trying to win. He's all about trying to do what he can to affect winning for his group. And those things that when they've come up short, it hasn't been because of him. He gives the maximum effort, as you alluded to, big scoring numbers and all that. That's what he's there to do in those instances. And it's on his teammates to fill in the cracks and do the other things, to get you over the hump.
Are you ready with your Jazz draft trivia question for one lucky listener to go play 18 holes at Bonneville? Or just a basketball trivia question?
No, I got, Well, I'm trying to think of something that's not easy for people to just look up.
Google exists.
Yeah, I know.
They're going to find it.
I know. It's, okay, the Jazz, the 1997 draft, the Jazz had as their point guards John Stockton and
Howard Isley.
Mm-hmm. And yet they still decided in the late first round to pick another point guard.
Yes, they did.
To give them 3 point guards in a summer where Howard Isley was going to be a free agent, and so it caused a little consternation. But it was a best player available thing. Who was the Jazz's first round pick in 1997?
Went on to become a head coach. Can we give that hint?
Oh, now see, now the walls are crumbling. Now you're giving it all away.
877-353-0700. Text in the name, and we're going to send you to play golf at Bonneville. My home course, 18 holes to Bonneville, 877-353-0700. More with Smitty coming up on the other side. But joining us live in studio, we have a very special offer for you from our friends at Cortland Roofing. It's my guy, Corey. Once again, Corey, happy Tuesday. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Right out of the gates, you have got a great offer for people during the spring season to replace their roof. Let's hear about it.
Yeah, so we have a killer offer that we're just doing for today. So give us a call at 801-615-5560. But the offer is twofold. First of all, if you need new rain gutters, if we replace your roof, we'll give you brand new 5-inch seamless rain gutters. If you aren't in need of rain gutters, then we'd give you $1,500 off the roof, a roof replacement.
Bottom line, if you've been thinking about getting your roof replaced, right now is the time because you're going to save literally thousands of dollars. 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560. All right, why is right now a good time, Corey, to get this done? I mean, obviously warm weather's on the way.
Yeah, so we have great weather right now. This is the best time to do a new roof. Also, we've had some wind, some crazy windstorms over the last couple weeks that have done some damage to roofs. In July we get the monsoon rain, the heavy rains that obviously if the roof is not put together and you have areas that have cause for leaking, then that can up the price tag of what it will cost to repair inside the house. So really the roof is the most important part of the house to get it repaired, to get it looked at, to make sure that it's all tightened up.
5-star Google reviews. That's the only type of review you have. I was looking on your website. They're all 5 stars. So you can be trusted. You have your own crew, and you also offer a great warranty, yes?
Yeah, so that's really is a testament to the quality of the work that we do and the trust that we have from the homeowners that we've helped out in the past. Because we're a preferred contractor, meaning with manufacturers, they have preferred contractors, and with that preferred contractor rating, we're able to offer a lifetime warranty on all roofs, which is the best warranty in the business.
Bottom line, save thousands of dollars. Get that roof replaced before the weather gets warm with our friends at Cortland Roofing right now by calling 801-615-5560. That's 801-615-5560. 801-615-5560. Online at cortlandroofing.com. Corey, thanks, man.
All right, thank you.
All right, more with Smitty coming up next right here on ESPN 700. NBA playoff basketball returns tonight. The conference finals in the West is first. Oklahoma City taking on Minnesota. And then tomorrow night it will be the Knicks and the Celtics live from the Mecca, the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden. Let's get his mic on. Richard Smith.
We're good.
I didn't hear what you had to
I always
say.
love that, Spence. I always love the world's most famous arena.
It's such an audacious claim.
And I always quickly say to myself, self-proclaimed.
It's very audacious. It's one of those things you just say it out loud, and people just tend to latch onto it.
Yeah, I know.
But we did a lot on the Knicks Pacers last series. Talked a little Donovan, talked a little Cavs. Let's move over now to the West, and we'll end with some Jazz for this segment, Smitty. Let's start in Minnesota, where your old friend Rudy Gobert resides. Your old friend Mike Conley resides. Joey Ingles, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Kind of the Jazz version. Jazz Midwest, team that actually is still playing and actually is good, unlike the Jazz. We'll get to that in a moment. We talked about this with the Tatum stuff. And I don't know if Golden State beats them with Steph Curry. I know it looks a lot different, certainly. But what do you make of – and I read this earlier, and I was unaware. The top 2 records in pro basketball since March 1st. Oklahoma City 1, Minnesota 2. Didn't start out that well. They were trying to figure out the Randall stuff, and Julius Randle is a very talented individual offensive scorer. At times, I think the Knicks asked a little too much of him, and he was an all-star once upon a time, obviously a very capable player. He seems to have settled in quite a bit. What do you make of how Chris Finch has coached his team to the Western Conference Finals?
Yeah, I think that it's taken a little while to adjust, but, I think Randle is in a good spot because he doesn't have to be the guy. He doesn't have to be doing all the heavy lifting, obviously, with Anthony Edwards there, and so he takes a lot of the spotlight off. But Randle is a good player in the mid post, and he's also a better passer than most people think, and a willing passer. And I think he fits in well with that group. On the other side from Jaden McDaniels, who's really a good wing defender and has become a serviceable three-point shooter, and they've gotten a nice rhythm going. And Rudy has always been the ultimate team guy. He just, tries to fill in the cracks where he can and make himself available on the offensive end and does what he does defensively. And so they're on a nice roll, and I think it's going to be a really competitive series. I really think the home teams are going to prevail during this round. I just think that those guys, they seem to both play better, a little bit more energized with their home crowds, which are both really terrific, during the playoffs. And so I think it's going to be fun to watch, and it's going to be interesting to see how they come out. The old rust versus rest, debate will happen tonight between OKC, just coming off a tough 7-game series and finishing up 48 hours ago, basically, and Minnesota having almost a week off, and so it's going to be interesting to see how the two teams come out.
Oddly enough, OKC 6-2 with 1 day of rest during the playoffs, and Minnesota 2-4 with more than 3 days of rest, and they have 5 days of rest. Yeah. Obviously, OKC, a bunch of young players, probably don't need as much rest as some of the teams that are a little bit older. Let me ask you about Rudy though. I was watching. It was Game 6, Knicks Celtics, and there was one possession where Mitchell Robinson was guarding, I think it was Luke Cornett. A pass went out to the wing. Robinson goes out and closes out, comes back down, checks Cornett. Then the ball goes to the corner to Jaylen Brown, and Mitchell Robinson goes out and closes out. Guarded like 3 different positions. The way that the game is played now, it asks a lot from a big to guard on the perimeter, to get out and close out, to guard multiple players. And Rudy does it as well as anybody, but for some reason does not get the credit. Why do you think that is? It feels like there's just people that have dug their heels in, and they're just going to hate everything he does, no matter what.
Yeah, I think that's I think you just said a lot there, Spence. I think some people get on a certain narrative, and then they just won't let it go for whatever reason. It's it's unfortunate. You have to really watch the games and pay attention to what's going on, and you realize all of the we had a in-house metric system that was a proprietary thing that the Jazz developed when I was there to gauge our defensive analytics and stuff, and to go off off the page of what the numbers showed you, and Rudy constantly, graded so far above everybody else in the league in terms of what he meant on the defensive end to teams in games, and he continues to do that. He's gotten to the point in his career where he knows that he doesn't have to do all of these, a bunch of things in the basket. He just has to do some of them and do them very well, and let the other people do what they're supposed to be doing in order to have some level of success. And he's learned how to do that, and he's smart about it, and he's a guy that's going to be a very valuable key for Minnesota in this series if they're going to have any success.
It's funny you reference, and I don't pretend to know the ins and outs of your in-house metric system as it pertains to the way Rudy impacted winning, but it reminds me of an interview I did when I was doing the show with Gordon, and we had Dennis on. We had Dennis Lindsay on, and he hit us with like 10 straight stats about everything Rudy does. Offensive field goal percentage, rebound percentage, block percentage, the opponent's field goal percentage against Rudy at the rim. I mean, I lost track after a while. He just boom, 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 boom. Did you guys ever feel like you had to stand up for him? Did you ever feel like the heat he was getting was so unfair that as an organization you had to get out in front of it a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there was some of that because it's, a lot of the noise you hear, is around from people who are lazy, who just, take some, the cream off the top and leave the rest of the dessert there and don't bother digging in to see what else is going on. And I always felt bad for him because not only was Rudy an integral part of what those Jazz teams did as his career progressed, but we also knew, behind closed doors that Rudy was one of our guys who was really about helping the team to whatever extent he could to be successful. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about his own honors. It wasn't about, getting attention to himself. He really cared about how the team was doing. And sometimes when he got attacked in that regard, you felt bad for him because you knew that he was trying to do the things that the coaches were asking him to do, within his ability and his skill level to be able to execute that. And when it didn't go well, or you missed an assignment, or you missed something that happened, and people were pointing to you, you just felt that it was unfair because you knew he was one of your guys who was trying to do the right thing, even if he failed sometimes.
Do you think that it affected him on a personal level, like behind closed doors? Because the Draymond stuff, it got so old, but it wasn't just Draymond. I mean, it felt like, and it still feels like, quite frankly, I was watching something earlier today. It was Gilbert Arenas who just decided to attack Rudy. He was like, he's the liability on this Minnesota team. And like I said, it feels like there's a faction of people in the league that have just decided, I don't like him.
Yeah.
Do you think behind closed doors it really hurt him? Do you think it got to him?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think he's human like anybody, and he would like to be recognized for his efforts and for the work he puts in. And I'll tell you what, nobody worked harder on his body and on his ability to move, from side to side and with his hips and being able to recover than he did. And he always put the work in. He always put the time in. Look, he's 7'2". He's got some limited true athletic ability. And then the rest of the stuff he has to, make up with, whether it's with his length or with his smarts or with his instincts or what have you. And he was always someone who would do that. And it's easy that, a lot of the national guys, it's just a lazy narrative because they don't want to do the work and they don't really look at it. They just kind of jump on a bandwagon. And, as you know, Spence, in this business, it's all about, clicks and, sound bites and whatever, and, whatever's easy. And so that's unfortunate, but Rudy has never backed down, from his teammates and his coaches, and has always been there to give a maximum effort from what he can do. And he'd like to be one of the boys in the room, and have all the other guys dap him up and all that kind of stuff, and accept him into the club, so to speak. And there are some guys who are jealous that he's been recognized as a 4-time NBA Defensive Player of the Year, and it's interesting. Similar, not the same, but maybe in the same boat as now I'm blanking out on his name. The center who won the Defensive Player of the Year awards for the Detroit Pistons in the 2000s, who was also a non
Ben Wallace.
Yeah, Ben Wallace.
Yeah.
A non offensive guy.
Yeah.
But Ben Wallace, Rudy was longer. Rudy's, more effective, maybe. I don't know. Ben Wallace presents, maybe a little tougher persona or personality, maybe. I don't know. But you never heard any of those criticisms of anybody about Ben Wallace, or, that he was short on offensive production or couldn't do this or that or whatever. And for whatever reason, Rudy has gotten that. I don't know what that is. Again, I think somebody way down the road, started that narrative and then just kind of, jumped on the bandwagon and decided to ride with it,
We'll end with a little Jazz stuff, but before we get there, I know you referenced you like both teams that have home court advantage. My only hesitancy with Oklahoma City, I guess is the way I'll put this. I mean, look, they have everything that you want. They have depth, they have star power, they have great coaching, they guard, they can score in a myriad of different ways. I always hesitate to anoint a team if I haven't seen them do it before. Minnesota was in the Western Conference Finals a year ago. Oklahoma City beat the Pelicans, then got smoked by the Mavs. Do you feel like this is OKC's time, or which way are you leaning on both sides?
No, I think it's going to be come down to beating a dead horse here, Spence. But the team that can avoid the injury, can avoid somebody not playing in a game. Say for example, somebody picks up 3 quick fouls and is out extended time, and the other team is able to take advantage of that. Hopefully, we don't get another Steph Curry or Jason Tatum thing, and everybody can play at full strength, and you can just see, what's going on. I think if all the guys are on the floor and all the guys are available and playing the way that they're capable, that's why I'm excited for both series, because I think they're both going to be very competitive. I think the team that keeps its head within itself doesn't get caught up in all the histrionics that can happen at this point in the playoffs, of people yelling at the referees every other whistle and getting upset about things. If you can keep your calm and just stay in your moment and try and concentrate on what you need to do next, I think those are the teams that are going to have a head up and have a better chance of succeeding and getting to the finals.
All right, before we let you go for today, let's do a little Jazz basketball. So the draft is coming up on June the 25th. The Jazz have number 5. They have number 21. They have 43 and 53. So 2 firsts, 2 seconds. Bobby Marks joined us yesterday and did a really, really good job of outlining. My question to him was, okay, so the narrative is the NBA is now built for parity. And the NBA is now built by design for every team in every city to have a shot. So over the past 7 years, we've seen Denver win a championship. We've seen Milwaukee win a championship. This year we have Indianapolis. We have Minnesota, Oklahoma City, 3 of the Final 4 teams. It is a perfect time for a team that plays their basketball in Salt Lake City to be able to capitalize on the landscape of the NBA. Unfortunately, the Jazz aren't ready. And there's 5 years left in the CBA. It expires in 2030. I don't know what's going to happen. I know there's a lot of pushback from people that don't like the way this thing is played out. There are several reports. I don't know how much of this is real. I don't know how much of this is true, that the Jazz are going to be bold. They're going to be bold this offseason. They have the assets. They have the picks. They have the space. They have the young players. What does a successful offseason look like for the Utah Jazz, Smitty?
Well, I think they are. They have to be bold because they have nowhere to go but up. They not only had the worst record in the league this past season, but they, by a lot of defensive metrics, they were one of, if not the worst, defensive team in a lot of years.
historically bad.
Yeah, I mean, they're just not very good at the moment. So there's nobody that's on the team that's untouchable, in my opinion. I think when you have the worst record and you're not showing that you're making any progress because this defensive malaise, if you will, has been the mantra the last couple of years. Then you have to make changes. So it wouldn't surprise me that they try and make a lot of moves, make a lot of changes. What does that yield? What does it look like? All those things, are up for grabs. I think they're going to be doing a lot of soul searching in terms of what is the next step that we're going to have to make to be able to start seeing some kind of a relevant improvement in what we're trying to do. Again, people get frustrated. People get upset about what's taking place at the moment. Obviously, you go from hoping you get the first pick to the fifth pick. Doesn't work out. And so now you're even more frustrated. But, Spence, they've only been doing this for 3 years. And, sometimes these things take 5, 6, 7 years and sometimes longer. You don't have control over some of the things like the draft, like the draft lottery last week. So, to your point, a lot of things are going to be on the table. A lot of things they're going to be trying to do. How much do they do? To the Danny Ainge mantra of big game hunting. They're going to be trying to do a lot of that in different ways. Do they come back with anything? Do they have a whole different scheme in terms of their team and what their personnel looks like in next October? Remains to be seen. But I think everything's on the table for them because they've got to show that which I know they're willing to do because Danny Ainge is willing, has shown in the past, he's willing to do anything. But they have to show that they can start making moves that look like they're making improvement and look like that they're moving in the right direction. For the benefit of their season ticket holders, their fans, everybody who are diehard Jazz fans.
Do you think they approach next year with best foot forward instead of inventing injuries and having Walker Kessler shoot 7 threes a night?
Well, I think they have to they have to make some kind of a show that looks like they are getting better. They are improving. To do another year of this thing that they just did is going to be difficult only from the standpoint that they're going to be having people breathing down their necks to say, hey, you just did that and it didn't work out. Mm-hmm. So you're going to do it again, and so that would be a hard sell, to their fan base. And look, nobody wants to lose and nobody wants to do it on purpose. Everybody wants to try and be a better version of themselves, and I'm sure they're going to kick the tires on a lot of different things in the next several months to see, how they can get that going in the right direction.
Great to see you, my friend. We'll let you get some rest. Thanks for the time, okay?
All right, Spence.
Richard Smith. I want to remind you guys to join me Monday, June the 23rd for the 2025 Van Noy Charity Golf Challenge at the Black Desert Resort in scenic St. George. All the proceedings from this tournament go to benefit the Van Noy Valor Foundation that helps foster kids in the Adoption Foundation. Kyle was adopted as an infant, so this cause is very meaningful to him and his family. We're going to be down there. Come hang out with us. It starts on Sunday, June the 22nd, with a welcome cocktail party at 7 o'clock. Then on Monday, it's an 8 a.m. check-in and breakfast. Welcome is at 8:45. A shotgun start is at 9 a.m. Then the awards will take place at 2:30. Lunch is served on the course. Van Noy Golf 2025.givesmart.com is the website. Van Noy Golf 2025.givesmart.com is the website. Want to tell you about my friends at IFA Country Stores. When the seasons change, if you're like any good coach, you're going to put together your game plan for a healthy green lawn, and you'll turn to the experts at IFA. Check out their 4+ lawn care program. Everything you need to make your yard a hit. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move at IFA and IFA.coop. We're joined now live in studio by my buddy Corey from Cortland Roofing on a Tuesday. Corey, happy Tuesday, man. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Right out of the gates, here's the number. It's 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560. Call today because you're going to save thousands of dollars on a potential roof replacement. Corey, it is your spring special. Let's hear about it.
Yeah, so we're offering a special just for today. If you call today and get on our schedule, we are offering free rain gutter replacement on any new roof. And if you don't need new rain gutters, then we're offering $1,500 off of a roof replacement. So that's just today. So call, get on the schedule, and we'll get you taken care of.
Bottom line is you call today, you save a grip of money. But, Corey, for people that might be questioning whether or not they have the budget, you'll work with them with financing options, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of different financing options that we can offer. Really, we just want to come in, sit down, assess your situation, and see what's going to be the best option for you regarding financing and other things.
And also, when it comes to work on a home, insurance companies may be involved, which might scare some homeowners, but you're there to help, yes?
Yeah, that can be a really overwhelming process. And so we really try to take that off the homeowners' plates. And so we do about 70 to 80% of the roofs we get the insurance company involved. And we can help the homeowner navigate through that process because it can be overwhelming. And if you are, if you're finding shingles in the yard, or if you're worried about your roof, if you've seen missing shingles on the roof, have us come, take a look at that, do a free inspection, and then we can help you decipher whether or not it would be good to go through the insurance or just maybe a basic repair.
Best warranty in the business, financing available, and you save thousands of dollars. Do this before the weather gets super warm. You'll save a grip of money on your power bill with our friends at Cortland Roofing. Here's the number again. 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560, online at cortlandroofing.com. Corey, thanks, man.
Thank you.
All right, the head coach of Real Salt Lake, Pablo Mastroeni, stops by coming up on the other side on a Tuesday drive right here on ESPN 700. We got playoff hockey on the station tonight. Carolina, Florida. Comes your way at 6 o'clock when we say goodnight. If you're looking for the hoops basketball side of things, it is OKC, Minnesota. You can hear that on the Fan. So playoff basketball, playoff hockey tonight. We'll switch gears and we'll talk a little soccer, a little RSL. The head coach of Real Salt Lake is our guest on a Tuesday afternoon. Pablo Mastroeni. Happy Tuesday, sir. How are we doing?
Happy Tuesday, Spence. Doing well. Yourself?
I'm well. I hate to start with the low-hanging fruit, but it's been a minute, my guy. It's been a minute since we've seen a goal. I believe the official tally is 246 minutes. I know we keep revisiting this, and every week it feels like you are liking what you're seeing as far as the chances that have been created. It's the finishing that is left wanting. Are you still in that space?
Yeah, I think so. It's been tough to see like the amount of times. Again, I think one of the things that we've really worked on since last year has been progressing the ball from our goal to our opponent's goal. And to be fair, it's not real sexy. It gives us a lot of control of the game, but we're really, really proficient at that. And then, even this morning, just broke down all the different chances that some of them we're not even getting shots on. And they just come down to decision making, patience. Some we have to go faster, some we have to go slower. And so just kind of breaking the different scenarios down for the guys so that they can, digest it. We can train it. We train it today. We'll train it the rest of this week. And hopefully, because if we don't have that one guy that's going to, and Diego Luna's been that guy, and it's obviously a big burden to carry, and it's not going to happen every game. So how can we now figure out different solutions more as a front five as opposed to just relying on one or two guys? And so that's really the methodology that we're going to take as to how we're going to flip this around and find more ways to get goals. And then hopefully if those front five are operating in unison, then we can release a pivot a little bit higher. That'll give us a sixth attacker, so that hopefully, again, doing it by numbers, doing it by committee, and doing it more as a collective. And so it's been frustrating, but again, we have all the pieces that we're going to have for the time being, and the onus is on myself and the coaches to find solutions to get these guys hitting balls in the back of the net.
Look, man, I know you're an extremely positive person, and I appreciate that about you, but I also watched you play for a lot of years, and I feel like I know you a little bit, and I know that there's a stone-cold killer and a competitor in there somewhere. At what point does it become frustrating? At what point does it become like, what else can I do to get this thing going in the right direction?
Yeah, again, I think we, proud to say that I've evolved a little bit from that. I mean, I still have that deep inside, or else I wouldn't be in this profession, because it is all about winning. But there's also what I have to be the example for the rest of the guys, right? Like I can sit here and be frustrated and throw my hands in the air and place blame, but at the end of the day, I have to have a cool head. I have to find solutions. I have to relay and sell that solution to the players. And that's the beauty of this craft, because it's really easy to say, hey, listen, we lost 40 something goals from last year. We're not going to be able to score goals, but the beauty of coaching is finding different solutions to new problems. And so for me, the one thing I identified three different things in the attack the ways we can score goals. One is offensive set pieces, right? And that's nothing to do with anyone in particular. That's good delivery and bravery and getting in the box. The other part is decisions and execution in the final third. And those are the things that we're going to continue to work on, that we worked on today and we work on the rest of the week. And the third thing is making sure our shape behind the ball is such that we can create repetitive attacks and releasing a pivot. And so that we can, from one attack, we can get 3 or 4 opportunities. So that's our action plan for the week. Those are the areas that we've identified we can make gains. And I think that's where my focus lies. So when you talk about frustration, it's when you stop coming up with different pathways to achieve a goal, I think, is when you get frustrated. And I think from a coaching perspective, that frustration is about yourself. And so that's where I stay positive, because there's always a solution. You just have to ask the right questions to get to the right to the right solutions and put a game plan in place to achieve those. And so that's the plan. Obviously, like you said, I think winning is the thing that drives all of us athletes. It is the holy grail. And when you're not doing that, it's really easy to get down on yourself, down on everyone, down on life. But it's really about being resilient. And for me, more importantly, being behaving like the type of player I want to see out in the field. And that's, even though it's not going well, you still believe, you're positive, you're finding solutions, and you're approaching every day like it's a great opportunity to get better.
Fair enough. Impressive growth. I was going to make a joke about sending my father to fight you in the locker room, but we don't have to do that today, Pablo. We can leave that.
You see how far I've come?
I'm impressed. You're a great example to somebody like me who has a little fire. I don't need to throw the Monopoly board if I'm playing Monopoly with my 8-year-old nephew. Okay, like, I'm with you. I hate to keep digging here, man. I don't know. Like, I watched your post-game presser, and there was a little something there after the Colorado L, and I see you on the sideline. Like, I just have to imagine if I'm as frustrated as I am watching your club and attack right now, I just have to imagine at times you're looking around at teams that have payrolls 10 times more than yours, and we were all expecting something more during the primary transfer window, and it didn't come. Like, how are you, I guess what I'll ask is, how are you digesting all this stuff when it does feel like you're entering a lot of matches up against it based off the players you have at your disposal?
Yeah, again, it's crazy, and I guess maybe I'm an eternal optimist, but like, it's so hard to build teams that are perennial playoff contenders and championship. Like, it takes time, and that's why I'll go back to what I said at the beginning is, we started this project last year as far as changing our shape and really being ball secure and ball dominant in the way we build from the back. And, there's a bunch of crazy stats. We're one of the top teams in the league going from our goal to our opponent's final third, right? So that's a stat that no one cares about. That's useless information as far as, results go game to game. The hardest thing to do in soccer is really that final third. And I just feel that we are so close to hitting the back of the net. And in every game, I can show you 6 or 7 different, if there was one decision made differently, it would hit the back of the net. And you obviously can't joystick the guys. So you're giving them information and they're learning on the fly. And so they're trying to digest this information and deliver it in real time. And so, like, I feel really good about our offense until we get to the final third. And that's really where, and you saw it last year with guys like Gomez and guys like, Chicho. They were scoring goals with very little XG. And it made the coaching seem like we were geniuses at the time, right? And it was really them making plays. And that's what I was alluding to after the game is, like, just somebody smash a ball in top bin from 20 yards out. Somebody get across the front of the defender and flick one in the back post, and it's just about making plays. But oftentimes when you're not scoring a lot of goals, Spence, what ends up happening is that run is a little bit late. That pass is a little bit late because you start overthinking it, and it doesn't come, it's not natural to you, right? We're not operating in the flow state. And so it's tough. And again, I actually feel it's my frustration, but I feel for the guys because it's very difficult to come in after games saying, guys, but 90% of the game, you guys on both sides of the ball are doing a great job. And I can't give them the know-how in real time with where seconds and inches are the difference between scoring and not scoring, that type of experience. One, because I wasn't a goal scorer myself, but they just, they're just lacking that little bit of that polish, that nous, and like I said earlier, Diego Luna's been the guy that's been doing that for us, and it's impossible to expect a guy that hasn't typically scored, 10, 15, 20 goals a season to be that guy every single game. And so I feel for him as well because he's doing a ton of work for us. And at the end of the day, we all, as a team, come into that locker room frustrated, and it's really about one phase of the game that can really turn this thing on its screws. And so it's if nothing else, it's going to bring our, the way I feel about the way we train today. It's, again, Tuesdays for me are the day, because after a tough result, you can you can drop tools, you cannot believe, but these guys got after it today, and they're full of belief and commitment, and the energy was just spot on. And so, as long as we have that, we do have a chance. And so now it's just about, as a collective, working extremely hard, believing harder than anyone does. Because once you get the first goal, the second goal, then they start coming in droves, and who knows? It might be Gozo that's going to be a 10-goal scorer this year.
At the risk of belaboring the point, I have one more, I guess, not to be redundant, point to make here. And once upon a time in MLS, it was a little bit different than it is now. The 2009 team we had here that won the Cup was not near the highest paid roster in MLS. They beat the team that was the highest paid roster in MLS that had a guy named David Beckham on it, had a guy named Landon Donovan on it. The league has changed 16 years later. So now we can talk about it as more of a grown-up big boy league, although I do think there are several things about the infrastructure of the league that need to be looked at. That's just me personally. And whether it's NFL, NBA, NHL, there is one thing, Pablo, and it's now prevalent in MLS that can even the playing field, and that is economic investment in talent. Period. Okay? It didn't used to be that way, but it is that way, and you have not received that from the front office or the ownership. You just haven't. Okay? So I just need to know how that lands with you.
Again, Spence, I mean, there's times where I'm watching other teams and the way they go about it, and I'm saying if we just had that one guy, because again, I think we're two attacking players away from being a top team in this conference and in this league. Two top, and again, why two? Well, one, because they'll help with the goals. But two, it will also activate Luna in a different way. Right now, Luna is the guy that's being double teamed, triple teamed, and it's a tough ask to ask a guy like Dom or Gozo or Jesus or Wolf or to be the guy that scores goals when historically it hasn't happened. And so I agree that investment is really important. You've got to have that. And I do believe with two players that no one would recognize our team. They wouldn't recognize all the work that's being done and the commitment, the graft, the quality from our goal to the final third. But I think that two players with proven experience would make the biggest difference in the world. And I've talked to Kurt and Jason. I think we're all on the same page as to what we need in order to be, a real contender. Because again, it's really hard to get all the phases right. And I'm saying we have, on both sides of the ball, I would say we have, 5 of the 6 phases on lock where we're up there with the top of the league. But the one that sticks out the most is that final third. And like you said, 200 and something minutes without a goal. That's where the pressure just keeps mounting on the defense. It keeps mounting on the guys trying to score goals because they're just not coming in. And offensively, you try to do more than. Defensively, you can only withstand so much pressure before you're playing from a place of we can't give one up, because if we do, how are we going to score goals? And I just think those two top players would alleviate all that for us and would put us in the right direction.
All right, we can move off of it. The sun is shining. It's Tuesday. It's a nice day, so let's move off of it. But I do have one more. I don't know if it's an uncomfortable question, but you took Diego off in the 58th minute, pre-planned, sending a message, something I'm not seeing. What was it? What went into that decision?
No, I think after reviewing the game, I probably should have left him on. He was leggy on the Wednesday at home, and probably left him on for 20 minutes too long. But again, I think this. For me, it's a tough situation as well, right? So I probably left him on 20 minutes too long in the Portland game, but I'm thinking to myself, we're at home, we need to win. Who's going to score the goals, right? So then I left him on. The Colorado game, he was leggy from the start. He came at halftime and he says, "Coach, I got more in the tank." And I was like, "All right, well let's see it." And to be fair, when I decided in the 60th minute, he wasn't really involved in the play except right before he came out. And at that moment, I should have pulled the sub back and said, "No, Diego's going to win this game for us." And so that's probably that's on me. But it was but it's also, 3 games in a row where he's put in max effort. And, the amount of running he does is through the roof. We were playing down a man in Dallas, so I was half cognizant of not running him through the ringer. He wasn't really involved in the game, and I was like, okay, maybe this is, an opportunity for some fresh legs. But I think in hindsight, I should have kept him on and maybe run him through the ringer. But then my biggest fear is if we lose a guy like Luna, then it's catastrophic as well. So it's all those different variables that went into it. But after review, should have left him in the game.
I like that transparency and honesty. But speaking of the potential of losing a guy like Luna, I was not in Colorado, which is probably why you lost, but we've been over that. So I was watching the Apple broadcast when something really caught my ear, namely the broadcaster saying that you, Pablo, told them that you'd be surprised if Diego Luna is still with the club after the summer European transfer window. Is that something that you told them? And if so, can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, no, I think that was completely out of context.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Luna's a guy that is near and dear to my heart, only because the transformation that he's had since he's been here, and obviously that's all on Luna, because the work that he's put in, and we were talking about Luna's trajectory, and I was saying when he got here, he didn't want to defend, didn't want to help the team. Could care less about, just the only thing he really wanted was get on the ball. And I was talking about how the national team is speaking about him and how they say he's a guy that plays with stones, right? He steps on the field and he has a presence. So even when maybe the attacking stuff isn't working, that he still contributes massively to the team and the spirit of the team. And so then I said it was in context to how fast he's gone from the player he was to the player he is. And so I said along that same trajectory, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not here at the end of the summer because someone's going to come in and pay $25 million or whatever it is to take him somewhere else, But I think, and I think the biggest thing with that is with the ownership change, there's and it's just been mentioned to me recently, which is really exciting, is ownership doesn't want to sell players moving forward.
Ooh.
They want to build a team that the community can get to know, support, have their favorite players, and build something that's long term. And so that was news to me. Obviously, I never want to lose Luna. I think that he's a player that can, a lot like Javi Morales back in the day, where he's a game changer. He's a guy that starts the attack, finishes attacks. He's one of the most likable people you will ever meet in your life, and someone that you always want to root for. So at least from my perspective, if Luna stays here at the club, it'd be I think the best thing for RSL moving forward, because he is a player that is I wouldn't say is irreplaceable, but you'd have to open up the bank to get a player that is committed and has the type of investment that he has as an attacking player on both sides of the ball that is just starting, to make the leap from young player to now superstar. So that I think that was taken out of context. It wasn't me wanting to move Luna on. I was just speaking towards his trajectory and how fast it's been. And I wouldn't be surprised, given how far he's come in a year and a half, 2 years, to where he could potentially go. But hopefully it's here at RSL for the long term.
So I think it's safe to say that Gail Miller and Steve Starks listen to the show, because that's I've just been begging for this forever. Pablo, hey, Porter, real quick, will you go ahead and formulate a press release that Pablo on the show has indicated Diego Luna is going to be an RSL man for life? Can you get that done? Yeah, thank you, sir. I kid. Look, I know the bottom line of what the club is trying to do, but that news, Pablo, is something that is also news to me. That had to be music to your ears, yes?
To be fair, I mean, again, and I think this is like a big part of like the unknowns that have been kind of happening. The underpinnings is obviously the move of the transfer of ownership, and obviously there's different philosophies of different groups. And working with GFH and David Blitzer has been amazing. It's opened my eyes to different ways of doing things. They care about the club. They look at it from a different perspective. And so I think the Millers being, family here in Utah for so many years and love their sports and want to build something that the fans can hang their hat on is just think about it from a coaching perspective. We put a lot of, time and energy into a guy like Andres Gomez, where, he came in, wasn't proven, and it took about a year for him to get up to speed, and then he just took off like a rocket. And I thought, it just feels like you're almost like you're raising these, you're helping develop these young players, and then they leave at the time where you think they can make huge impacts, not only at the club from a playing perspective, but in the community. And like guys like Beckerman that were at the club a long time. I mean, fans, you say Beckerman and everyone knows who you're talking about. And it's like, it just feels good. And from a coaching perspective, it's great to see that, some of the time and energy, and it's not all soccer. A lot of it's about life and how to be a good pro and how to look after yourself and how to carry a little bit more, responsibility and all these little things that you go and see these guys and Beckerman still lives here. And so now he's giving back to the community. So I think it's a gift that keeps on giving, but from our standpoint as coaches is it makes the work more meaningful when you know that there's they could potentially be here long term, and it just, you can go all in. It's not like a short term thing. You can go all in and make the necessary decisions to help them more longer term, which I think is even better for them. So, music to my ears. I think that's why we do it, is to build something that's sustainable, build a team that can be a perennial playoff team that competes for trophies every year. And the only way you do that is with continuity. And so, helping Luna in his journey, but more importantly, having the ability to keep him around is truly, music to my ears, as you said.
Yeah, for sure. And look, you nailed it at the end. It's also the only way to win, dude. It just is. It's the only way to win. Like, otherwise, we're spinning our wheels. The fans are upset. There's nobody that's here long term. And it does a disservice to you. So we'll end on one more positive note, then I'll set you loose after this. I think you got something in this Gozo kid. I don't know much about him, but you've been giving him times and starts over the past little bit. And look, he's young, he's raw, but you can see there's something there, isn't there?
I tell you what, and it's a little bit, I don't want to go crazy with the comparisons because I think they're all very unique. But raw talent, he has. The one thing that's true with Andres, that's true with Diego Luna, and true with Gozo, is that they're all learners, right? So they're young players with a lot of talent, but they're also aware that they don't know everything. And so what they do is they go, you give them, I was working with Gozo today on his crossing, right? Because that's an area I think he can make gains. And just gave him a way to think about how he crosses the ball, and he started delivering really good balls. And so it's like, this is, for me, the beauty of coaching is like sharing your experience, but more importantly, you have to have a willing participant receiving it. If they know everything, then there's no need for a coach, right? And so I think those are the similarities between the three of them. And I think what Gozo has is really high-end speed, really high-end work rate defensively. And what he's doing every day after practice is sharpening his tools in front of the goal. So shooting, crossing, passing, all these little things. And so there is no doubt that Gozo is going to be a top player in this league. And again, is it 2 years from now? Is it next year? Is it 4 years from now? I don't know. But he has all the footballing characteristics that can make him a top pro, physical and, technical. But more importantly, he's got the character of a guy that I believe will be a learner, and he'll get it. He will figure it out, and he will understand what his role is and what his craft is, and putting it all together. In the short term, the way he's helping our group is he just brings so much enthusiasm and energy at a time where our team really, really needs it. So he's been special for us now, but I really believe he'll be a special player for this club in the future.
Well, Pobs, my guy, I feel like today was therapy. We exercised some demons, we talked through some issues, and then we ended in the nest in the safe place, right?
Let's go. It felt good, Spence. I appreciate you. I'll send you the check for the therapy session.
Love it. Pablo Mastroianni, head coach of Real Salt Lake. RSL welcomes in the best team in Major League Soccer, Vancouver, coming up 7:30 on Saturday. If you missed that interview and you're an RSL fan, The big tidbit is that recently Pablo was told that the new ownership group, which of course is led by the Miller family, not interested in selling any of these young, talented players. Does that mean it will never happen? No. But it's the only way to win. Continuity, build a roster. Oof, man, that is good news. If you missed it, check out the website in a few minutes. All right. Before we catch a break, 5 o'clock hour of the drive welcomes in Corey from Cortland Roofing on a Tuesday. Corey, happy Tuesday, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Okay, bottom line, spring special. Save thousands of dollars on a roof replacement, period. Here's the number. It's 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560. Corey, what exactly is the spring special for our listeners today?
Yeah, we've got a killer offer for your listeners. It's twofold. First of all, if you need new rain gutters, if we put on a new roof, we'll install all brand new 5-inch seamless rain gutters. If you don't need new rain gutters, then we offer $1,500 off a replacement roof. So this is an incredible offer to save thousands of dollars to your listeners.
Massive savings. And, Corey, for anybody that is concerned potentially about the budgetary hit beyond the savings, you have financing options available.
Yes, we have lots of financing options available. Give us a call. We'll come out. We'll assess your situation and find something that will work for you and allow you to afford a brand new roof.
And brand new roofs in most housing projects sometimes include insurance companies, which can be a little complex, but you're a veteran. You've done this, and you know how to kind of traverse that space.
Yeah, so about 70 to 80% of the roofs we do, the insurance company is involved, so we can really help the homeowner navigate through that whole process because it can sometimes be overwhelming. But the first thing we need to do is come out and inspect the roof and see if it could even qualify for insurance coverage. So give us a call.
Bottom line, call today, save a bunch of money, good financing options available. They offer lifetime warranties. It's our friends at Cortland Roofing, and the number is 801-615-5560. That's 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560, online at cortlandroofing.com. Corey, thanks, man.
All right, thank you.
All right. All right, the playoffs are back tonight, both in the world of professional hockey and the world of professional basketball. We're going to have Carolina and Florida, game one here on ESPN 700 for OKC and Minnesota. That can be heard on The Fan. Tomorrow night, it will be the Knicks and the Celtics. So stay tuned for that. And on the hockey side of things, it will be the Oilers and the Stars. So the Final Four in both hockey and in the NBA is set. Can I get something off my chest before we say goodnight?
Of course.
I'm all for, like, off-season football conversation. Folks love football. We're the home of the Utes. Do college football as much as we possibly can. I'm not one just to piss topics on air that aren't applicable. I am so over the debate about whether or not the tush push should be allowed.
Give me a break.
Every day, man. Every day there's another update about this topic that I'm just completely tired of.
Maybe to your liking, that debate will be over tomorrow when the owners vote to ban it, which is just silly. It's a play. It's a quarterback sneak. It's a quarterback sneak done by a quarterback that squats 500 pounds and a running back that, does more than that, and an offensive line that is maybe the best in the league, but it's a quarterback sneak. If you want to talk about, assisting the runner and curtailing those rules a little bit, okay. But we're changing the rules around a quarterback sneak. That is something that is being voted on by a bunch of owners around the league, and it's going to be approved tomorrow. I want to, just preface that. Very little chance that it isn't. And it's because a bunch of teams can't stop the Eagles from doing it. And to me, that's it's pretty dumb. I'm a Cowboys fan. I hate the Eagles. Even though Britton Covey's on that roster, I struggle cheering for them to win a Super Bowl. It's ridiculous. If you can't stop it, draft that kid from Florida and try to stop it. I'm kind of bugged, and the fact that we continue to change sports to make them like better for TV and easier on the eyes is I'm not really on board with it.
It's pretty wild how to me what this is a testament to how popular NFL football is, that every single day we're getting an update on the tush push. To Porter's point, if you don't like it, stop it. And you don't change the rules because you can't stop a play that's been legal for decades and decades and decades. It's just ridiculous. Also today, it was unanimous that NFL players are okay to play flag football in the 2028 Olympics. I continue to ask, who are we playing against? Football is really only played in America and maybe Canada a little bit. There's a little kicking.
Yeah, there's a few Australian players that have made it in the NFL. Obviously, Mitch Wishnowsky, a punter. I believe the 49ers had a punt returner who was of Australian descent. So the Aussies, they're going to have some special teams guys. There are a couple like Euro teams that still have organizations. I don't know who they really play, but yeah, we'll see.
I don't know. This whole thing has caught me up. We should play ourselves. They should have like multiple flag football teams comprised of only American NFL players, because it is literally a sport that is played in America. It is a game that you throw a football with your hands, but there's a little kicking.
There's a little kicking.
Shout out SNL.
Even though it's still called football, we're getting rid of all the kicking.
How many points is it? Sometimes one, sometimes three, right? You saw the SNL skit, right? The Nate Bargatze skit? Yeah. Excellent stuff.
Those skits are really funny. They've done one on NFL, but also like America and like English language. It's good stuff.
Who you leaning towards? T-Wolves, OKC? I honestly I think OKC is the lean for sure, but there's something about the way Minnesota has a little something. I mean, they've got several dudes they can throw at Shea.
Yeah.
Rudy's going to neutralize a lot of their interior drives, and they love to attack the bucket. I mean, if I was putting money on it, which I'm not, I'd probably put it on OKC, but I would not look past Minnesota.
OKC is the better roster. OKC is, over the next 5 years, the team that we're going to be talking about, not Minnesota. But I might be leaning towards the Timberwolves just right now. They've been there. They know what a conference finals looks like. They have a bunch of players who have decades-long careers building towards this moment. While OKC is more talented, while I believe that, almost every box of which way I lean goes towards OKC, I kind of have a feeling that the Minnesota Timberwolves pull this one out, and they do so behind the veteran leadership that they do have. There is one thing that I am looking for in this series, Spence. The narrative of Rudy Gobert being like tough to play in the playoffs or sometimes played off the floor in the playoffs is mostly completely unwarranted. But in this series, in this matchup, there are some guys that OKC can throw at him to space the floor, to put Rudy in the situations that we saw where the Jazz were asking him, not out of position. The Jazz were asking him to guard two players at a time in the corner, in the short corner, and still continue to guard the post. That's something that OKC can maybe go back and look at and try to emulate a little bit. I'm curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it will be really, really interesting to see how this series plays out. I will admit it's not quite Shaq and Kobe beef. I'd like to see Rudy get a trophy.
Yeah.
Before our guy Don.
Okay.
That's kind of like I know that narrative got a little tired. Which team are you on?
Yeah.
But knowing what happened behind the scenes and all the guff Rudy took, and really what was happening was Donovan and his powerful agency making power plays.
Yeah.
I'm kind of cheering for Rudy and Mike, and of course Joey Ingles too. Love Conley. I'd love to see Gobert get a trophy.
I'm
not
more,
over the Knicks. Not over the Knicks.
Of
Let's
course.
be clear.
More partial to Conley. I think he is one of the real good guys in the NBA. Not that Rudy's not. He's a nice dude, but I look at Mike Conley as one of the nicer fellas that we've worked with in the NBA circles. That being said, if you do make it like a Rudy Don thing, I'm with you on that. It would be cool to see him win, and not just the Rudy Don thing, but just the Rudy versus the world type thing, right? Whether we talk about go back to the combine, go back to his time as a prospect, there's just something about Rudy where even though there's parts of him that I love to hate, I think that he can lean into the sensitivity stuff. I think the crystals are silly, right? I have that argument with my aunt every week. It's something that is very Rudy. It's part of his identity, and man, I think that it would be pretty cool to see that guy win.
Last thing, a recommendation before we say goodnight. Last night, no playoff basketball. Got all caught up on Hacks, HBO. What else did I catch up on? Can't remember. But I did sit down and watch. We had our guy Kalen Jones on, who's now with Netflix, pubbing his new documentary, Untold. It's called Shooting Guards. It's about the situation with Gilbert Arenas and Javaris Crittenton. And one of the things that Untold does really well, Manti Te'o story, among others that they've done, the Brett Favre may drop tonight, actually, doing one on Brett Favre, is a story gets reported, and then you believe initially what you hear, and then it goes away, and then you kind of forget about it. You will be floored about what actually happened between Javaris Crittenton and Gilbert Arenas, and I came away feeling so gutted for Javaris Crittenton. Now, let me be clear. Javaris Crittenton was committed of murder far after the fact and spent a decade in jail. And unfortunately, a young lady lost her life with multiple kids. Of course, not condoning that. But the way this was portrayed and what actually happened, it is worth your time to check this out. I think you'll come away with a lot of sympathy for Javaris Crittenton.
Well, and as you kind of alluded to, that later situation didn't happen in a vacuum away from what happened to Javaris Crittenton, his career, all of the above. It's an interesting look. I still gotta finish it, but yeah, Kalen, cool to see him make moves regardless of where it is. He's always covering something cool, something interesting, and I'm looking forward to the Favre one too, because that's been one of the more kind of polarizing but interesting stories in the retired sports world in recent memory. So yeah, I'll finish the Shooting Guards, which Kalen got the assignment for naming that one. Hit the nail on the head.
He sure did.
The Brett Favre one.
Indeed.
Cool.
Rest in peace, George Wendt, better known as Norm from Cheers. He passed away today.
Okay.
Unfortunately, you're way too young to remember Cheers.
I know. Some quotes that I've heard. My family loved Cheers, but yeah, Cheers to me is the bar downtown.
Indeed. But it was a great television show a number of years ago. Ted Danson, Kirstie Alley. Look it up, kids. It was phenomenal back in the day. All right, time for playoff hockey here on ESPN 700. It's Carolina and Florida. For playoff basketball, check out The Fan. Porter, what comes our way on a Wednesday edition of the program?
As you mentioned, we'll have NHL playoffs here on the station here momentarily. NBA playoffs over on The Fan if you're looking for Western Conference Finals Game 1. On the show tomorrow, Josh Furlong for some latest on the Utes offseason. Haven't caught up with Josh in quite a minute. Spencer Linton on the latest on the BYU side. We'll do a little red and blue on a Wednesday, 94 days away from college football, of course, as we do each and every Wednesday, NBA Daily Assist Time. This one with Dave McMenamin. And away from Utah on this Wednesday, Chris Kamrani will join us via the phone. We don't get him in studio this week, unfortunately.
All right, well, that'll be a fun Wednesday show. We'll say goodnight. Special thank you today to Lee Ellis, Tim McMahon, Richard Smith, and Pablo Mastroeni. RSL fans, if you missed that interview, I would highly encourage you to go find it, but you can find everything on the website, which is ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app. Take us on the go. ESPN app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. Then for what we do in our space for 4 hours every afternoon, check out our podcast page. And if you like what we do, we would appreciate your support. How you can do that is give us a subscription or follow along. Say nice things in the comments, then give us all the stars they allow, thumbs up or whatever it is. You will be eternally blessed. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Enjoy your Tuesday evening. Playoff hockey comes your way. Coming up on the other side. We'll talk to you tomorrow right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network.